This is a News 10 Decision 2024 update, brought to you by Kelly Cawthorn.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome into the News 10 Now desk here in the WILX newsroom. We are just beginning our nonstop coverage of election night here as we focus on not only the presidential race, but all of our local races here in mid-Michigan and across the state as well. Throughout the night, we're going to be bringing you full coverage, especially, of course, on the presidential race. You can see a number of states have already been called. The states that are shaded deep blue or deep red have already been called for Vice President Kamala Harris or former President Donald Trump. And you can see those states shaded right here. You can see the electoral vote number already here. 86 for Donald Trump and 35 for Kamala Harris. These are early numbers. The lighter shaded, you could just see South Carolina was actually just called for former President Donald Trump. So that one, you could just see affected the overall electoral college vote for former President Donald Trump as well. The lighter shades are where a candidate is leading as these votes come in. So as you can see, early returns in the state of Pennsylvania, a highly contested state, expected to be another big swing state in this election. Very early returns, only 2.6% of the votes in going towards Kamala Harris so far. Ohio currently very light shade of blue as well as North Carolina and Virginia. These are all very early results. Again, the hard shaded states, those are the ones that have already been called for that candidate. And there's a lot of different features that we're going to go through with the maps that we have at our disposal, including which states are leaning, where you can kind of highlight some of those states. These are the states that at the moment, of course, we're expecting Texas to go red, but at the moment, with a very early percentage of the votes in, is currently leaning towards Kamala Harris. And then you can also look at the leans on the Republican side. At the moment, early returns, Georgia, key swing state, once again, early return leaning toward former President Donald Trump. So these are all of the things that we're going to be going through throughout the night here on News 10 as the race to 270 is on to see who will sit in the Oval Office. A lot of the East Coast states, as you can see, already went to Kamala Harris. A lot of those, some of the smaller electoral college vote numbers in total with Rhode Island and Connecticut and Vermont, they don't total to a lot of electoral college votes. New Hampshire currently still coming in, leaning towards Kamala Harris at the moment, but only 14.4% of the expected vote is in New Hampshire. We have reporters spanned out across the state of Michigan covering a lot of the races, including reaction to the presidential race, but also the Senate race with Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers going head-to-head for the open seat left by Debbie Stabenow, opting not to seek another term. She will retire after years of service in Michigan in the Senate. So that is going to be a highly contested race. We're going to check in on that as soon as the Michigan numbers come in. Of course, the Michigan polls just closed, many of them at 8 o'clock. The Western Upper Peninsula will be open until 9 o'clock. People forget, but the Western UP is in the Central Time Zone. So a lot of these results for the state of Michigan are going to be coming in the moments ahead and the minutes ahead. So these are just some of the results that we're going to be following for you. Our reporters, we have Zachariah Wheaton out covering the Slotkin campaign in Detroit. We have Jordan Burrell out covering the Mike Rogers campaign for us tonight. We're going to check in with both of them momentarily as soon as we get them ready to go. But those campaign watch parties are happening tonight, and we're going to make sure we check in with them throughout the night. We also have a number of legal and election experts that are going to be, and political experts that are going to be coming on to the News 10 Now desk to give us some of that background and some of the expertise that we're looking for as far as you see the numbers, but what do they really mean? And that is some of the things that we're going to be breaking down with our election experts tonight on the Now desk as well. So at the moment, you can see former President Donald Trump already securing 95 electoral college votes, Vice President Kamala Harris with 35, and we do have a number of states with a lean so far, but not anything that is too representative of who is winning. You can see Michigan, we have no votes in yet. The polls just closed minutes ago at 8 o'clock. As soon as these numbers come in, we're going to be making sure that we get you those updated numbers, especially in the mid-Michigan area, but also some of the bigger counties that people are going to watch. Kent County, a big county that a lot of people are going to be focusing on in West Michigan, and of course the Detroit area as well. What is the voter turnout? We saw 3.2 million votes cast before Election Day in the state of Michigan, whether that be absentee ballots or that be early in-person voting, which was offered for the first time this year. 9 days of early in-person voting across the state. And they saw about a third of the 3.2 million votes came from early in-person voting, and the other 2/3 came from absentee ballots that were submitted or returned ahead of the early in-person or ahead of the election day today. So these are some of the results that we're going to be watching as they come in. At the moment, no Michigan results have been reported yet. Of course, we're going to continue to keep you updated with that. All eyes are on Pennsylvania as well. At the moment, a lean towards Kamala Harris, but you can see the counties that are mostly in, at the moment, very small percentages, and only 3% of the total expected vote for the state of Pennsylvania. So very little stock that we're going to put in that at the moment. And Texas, very early returns in the state of Texas. 11.2% though, that is one of the bigger percentages total that we've seen on one of the states that has not been called. 11.2%, currently about tied, as you can see, Vice President Kamala Harris with a very slight lead, 49.6 to 49.1. We do expect Texas probably goes red, not necessarily one of the states that we believe is going to be a battleground state, but we will be keeping an eye on it. I mentioned we have reporters spanned across the state. We are going to check in now with Zachariah Wheaton and Jordan Burrell out covering the U.S. Senate race. And we do want to start with Zachariah, who is out covering the Alyssa Slotkin campaign. Zach, what is the atmosphere, the vibe like at the watch party there in the city of Detroit?
Yeah, Seth. So right now we're at the soundboard here in Detroit, where they have people allowing people to come in now. I just saw the Senate hopeful Alyssa Slotkin. She just walked past me, and now allowing people to come in. The energy here, a lot of people getting very excited as the results now start to come in with the polls being closed. And Slotkin, it's been something that she's been working on throughout her campaign, talking about her work as a congresswoman, lowering prescription drug costs and protecting reproductive freedoms. As the Democrats here in Detroit, they're hoping that that message gets across to the voters. As we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, Zachariah, thank you. We are going to check in now with Jordan Burrell. Jordan is out covering the Mike Rogers campaign for us tonight. Jordan, what is the feeling and the vibe in the Mike Rogers campaign watch party room?
Hi, Seth. The vibe is actually pretty good. I mean, it's a lot of people here. We were a little worried. They kind of all came in a little bit after 7, but it's a pretty big crowd now. Almost every seat is taken up. We just heard from Michigan GOP Chair Pete Hoekstra just as polls closed at 8 o'clock, but so far so good. We were speaking to some voters, and some of the issues at the top of their mind and why they're really rooting for Rogers and Trump is because of the economy. They say as middle-class families, it's been hard to buy groceries, afford gas, things like that. So really, I think one of the bigger sticking points here tonight is the economy.
All right, Jordan and Zachariah, thank you so much. They will be covering the U.S. Senate race for us all night long as we continue to follow that race. Let's look at that race really quickly here at the state of Michigan level. We right now are looking at the Senate race. Of course, 0 votes in, but what we're going to be doing as we go on throughout the night here on News 10 Plus is we're going to be taking a look at how the candidates are doing compared to the top of the ticket. How is Alyssa Slotkin going to perform compared to Kamala Harris in some of these counties? And we're going to look specifically at the mid-Michigan area as well. When it comes to Ingham County, Eaton County, Clinton, as you can see, how are they going to fare against the presidential candidates? As soon as these results start to come in, we're going to get a better idea of which candidate is outperforming the other as far as the top of the ticket or maybe the Senate candidates all the way down to the U.S. congressional races as well. So these are just a few of the things that we're going to be taking a look at. Of course, as I mentioned, these results have not come in. What has come in are a number of states that have already been called. And these states are the ones that are shaded, are the ones that have already been called for those respective candidates. And this is something we're going to continue to keep a very close eye on as the race to 270 is on. You can see that Vice President Kamala Harris, you can see the number she is at and what she needs to get to 270, as well as former President Donald Trump. And we're also going to take a look. This is a nice feature that we have here at the News 10 Now desk at the swing states specifically. And these are some of the swing states. It's not working there for a second. But these are some of the swing states, as you can see on the electoral map, that are highlighted. Those are the ones we're really going to be focusing on that a lot of people believe will determine who sits in the Oval Office in January. And as you can see, no surprise, the state of Michigan, one of those key states, as well as Pennsylvania and the state of Wisconsin. The blue wall, as they call it, that they say are very important to Vice President Kamala Harris's chances to stay or to get into the White House in January. So these are some of the results that we're closely following. And you can see why they're considered the swing states. In 2020, those states that we mentioned, most of them went blue to Joe Biden. We're talking Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. The only one of the swing states, so-called for this election, that went red was North Carolina in 2020. But if you compare that to 2016, when former President Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton, you could see a lot of those states went red. And that is going to be the question that we're following here tonight. What will these swing states, 7 battleground states, be doing as we follow the election results tonight? So right now we are going to take a quick commercial break. When we get back, we're going to be talking with Michael McDaniel. He's a legal expert that's going to be talking about some of the election security and election threats surrounding Election Day. We'll be right back on the News 10 Now desk.
They say the only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
They say the only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
They say the only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
They say the only constant in
All right, welcome back into the News 10 Now desk. Joined now by Michael McDaniel, the Director of Homeland Law with the Cooley Law School. Mike, if you want to just slide into the camera, I can see you're just off camera here. Michael, thanks for joining us again. You were with us in 2022 when we went over the governor's race here in the state of Michigan. Presidential race this time around, voter turnout expected to be high. We want to get your expertise when it comes to election law and election security, when it comes to the threats that we've seen really from all over the country and in the state of Michigan. This election, highly contested, highly heated race. Do you believe that there's election-related security concerns once again surrounding this election, similar to what we saw in 2020?
Well, Seth, thank you. There's always going to be concerns. I think that this time, more than 2022, and certainly more than 2020, that we're prepared for those concerns, both in terms of physical security and in terms of human security, which talks about awareness, people understanding disinformation attacks, and that sort of thing. So I think we're more prepared for this than we have been in the past. But as you point out, this is a much higher turnout than we've seen in the previous years, and it's amazing how exponentially it's gone up from 2020. So that means there's more people out there who could be voting for the first time and be confused or led astray. And I think that when we see, if I can segue into the other issue, if we see these attacks or these hoax attacks by the Russians, if you look at that, it was in 4 states, and they were all battleground states. It was certainly Georgia, and it was Michigan, and it was Wisconsin. And I think that what we have seen there is an attempt and Pennsylvania, by the Russians to sort of focus on some Democratic strongholds. And I say that because we've got the 2 counties surrounding Atlanta, which had 24 hoaxes in the last few hours, the last day. And we've seen at least a couple in Michigan as well, although everybody was ready for them. Both the Michigan Secretary of State, CISA, the Federal Critical Infrastructure and Cybersecurity Agency, said, wait a minute, folks, these are clearly from Russian domains. Don't pay attention to this. And they got the word out to all the states very, very quickly. So what I'm seeing is that we are prepared and we're responding quickly and we're getting information out to the voters.
Yeah. And if you're getting caught up, what he's talking about is a number of hoax calls called in. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson did come out and say that they were able to quickly track those domains for those hoax calls to Russia. So that it just happened today. So these are things that are developing within the last few hours. When you look at overall the election picture, is there anything that concerns you going forward, regardless of the outcome, when it comes to election security?
Well, I'm concerned that political rhetoric may escalate like it did 4 years ago. I don't worry about it so much tonight, but between now and January 6th, when we have the certification of the electors by the 2 houses of Congress, I'm concerned about an escalation of rhetoric and what we might have to do to protect against that. I don't think that we will have an issue like we had 4 years ago because we're better prepared for it. But that's still a concern, and we have to spend an awful lot of resources to prepare for that. And it's really sort of a sign that democracy's wounded a little bit if we have to worry about violence against our democratic process.
All right. If anything pops up, we're going to make sure we keep you very close throughout the night, Michael. So I appreciate you joining us here on the News 10 Now Desk. We're going to check back in with him, like I said, kind of throughout the night. And if anything pops up, it'll be one of the people who we drag right back on here to the News 10 Now Desk as fast as we can. So I appreciate you joining us this morning. I do want to give a quick update on what we have on the results for the presidential election as you look at the map. At the moment, former President Donald Trump with 95 Electoral College votes secured. Vice President Kamala Harris with 35. And you can see more and more states, including the state of Michigan, now reporting results for the first time tonight. So we're going to get to Michigan in just a second. All of the lightly shaded colors here, those are states that have a lean at the moment with only a certain percentage of the expected vote in. The harder shaded colors of red and blue, those are states that the Associated Press has already called a winner for. So that is what we're going to be tracking. As you can see, very early results in for states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, North Carolina, some of those swing states, Georgia. And you can see a lean, but we're not going to put too much stock into that at the moment. Let's go look at the state of Michigan, though, and see which counties have started to report results. As you can see, again, early, 137,000, almost 138,000 votes in the state of Michigan for Vice President Kamala Harris, just under 80,000 for former President Donald Trump. At the moment, the only county in our area that is reporting results is Branch County with 6.4% of the expected vote in. NBC has called South Carolina for former President Donald Trump, so that's an update just into the newsroom. And at the moment, Branch County, like I mentioned, only 6.4% of the expected vote is in, about 70% of those going to former President Donald Trump with about 1,000 votes so far. So these numbers very early in the state of Michigan. Crystal. Very early. So we are going to continue to update you on the state of Michigan as the results come in. We do have results starting to come in for states like Kansas as well. Very early results here. Kamala Harris have a slight lean there. Texas, a slight lean towards former President Donald Trump at this time. Again, this is a race to 270 electoral votes needed to win here. Let's take a look at some of the states that are currently leaning toward Vice President Kamala Harris. Again, very early, but states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina have been labeled as states to watch, battleground states, as we get closer and closer to the election. And states that are leaning towards former President Donald Trump include Texas, Georgia, another key battleground state, and the state of Missouri. Barely any votes in the state of Missouri, the only 0.4%. So this is something we're going to continue to keep a very close eye on as we look at what has been leaning Democratic, what has been leaning Republican, and the states that are already called, as I mentioned, those are the ones that are in harder shades of red. In a second here, we're going to welcome Dr. Farha Abbasi into the program, an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Michigan State University and a core faculty member of the Muslim Studies program. We're going to talk about the Arab American vote and the Muslim vote in the state of Michigan and what impact it could have on the presidential election here in the state of Michigan. If you look at the state of Michigan, Dearborn, one of the higher average populations of Arab Americans in the entire country in Dearborn, that is in Wayne County. So when we look at the results in Wayne County, of course, only 0.1% of the votes in at this moment. This is going to be something a lot of people are keeping a very close eye on in Wayne County. Of course, we're expecting Wayne County to go blue with the Democratic side of things, but the Arab population, what is that going to do to the percentages, and could that be enough to flip Michigan red like it was in 2016? So we're going to check in with her in just a minute. And these results, like I mentioned, just coming into the newsroom, these are very fresh results for the state of Michigan. If we go back in, now it's 3.7%. You do see, though, that these numbers are updating in live time. So this is something where as soon as I'm seeing it, you at home, you're seeing it for the first time as well. So once again, this is something we're continuing to keep an eye on. Ohio with a slight shade of blue so far. And as you can see, actually 37% of the vote is in the state of Ohio. You can see some of the counties that have reports in so far. That does not mean that 100% of those counties are done. Just means that they are starting to report some results at this time. 38% now. You can see Vice President Kamala Harris with a very, very slim lead in the state of Ohio. Ohio not necessarily labeled as a battleground state for this election, but it is one that has kind of flipped in the past, so one that we're going to be certainly keeping an eye on. I believe we do have Dr. Farha Abbasi ready to join us here at the News 10 Now desk, if you want to make your way over here. Again, we're going to talk about the impact of Arab Americans and Muslim voters, not only in the state of Michigan, but what it can do on the national level as far as the presidential race between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. We mentioned Dearborn, a very highly concentrated population of Arab Americans in Dearborn. It's in Wayne County, which, again, as I mentioned, we expect to go blue. But what is the percentage going to be? What role do you believe Muslim voters will play in this election?
I think we will have a major impact. We have almost 2 million Arab registered voters. Most of them are Muslims. And then if we look at from Muslim perspective, 2.5 million registered voters. Right now, we carried the Dearborn and Michigan for President Biden. We voted like over 80% voted in favor of President Biden. But right now, the polls are showing that the vote is completely split. And I feel that the responsibility lies with the Democratic Party. They failed to engage the voters. They failed to show any empathy on the major conflict happening that's directly and indirectly impacting the Muslim population in Dearborn area. Over 43,000 casualties. People have family members there. But even vicariously, the connection, the ethical conflict that we all have been through. But that said and done, the poll that just came out is showing vote divided between Harris and Stein at this point, so Democratic Party. And I would give credit to President Trump, candidate Trump, that he did try to engage the Muslim vote in the last days. But of course, we have a history. We are concerned about the Muslim ban and all the immigration policies. So right now, I think as a voter, we are all very divided. We have never been one issue voter. We have intersectional interests. So me, if I take it as a professional, as a mental health provider, as a mother, as an immigrant, I have other concerns also that might impact how I vote or how I voted. So, but I do feel that at this point, if Democratic Party loses in Michigan, the responsibility solely lies on them.
And we're, like I said, we're looking at Wayne County pretty closely here, and we're going to check to see how the Democrats do in Wayne County in this election compared to 2020. When you see, and obviously they're still rolling in at the moment, when you see Wayne County results, what do you think the impact will be, and maybe percentage-wise or just votes-wise? I mean, what do you think that impact would look like?
I am concerned. As a Democrat, I'm concerned. But the trust deficit of the voters is very palpable. And I think this would be a waking up moment for Democratic Party. Even if they win, it is a majority of voters that feel disenfranchised and devalued by them. And I think it would be a wake up call. And it is going to be important to understand the psyche of the Muslim voter and engage them in the future. So, like I said, for Biden, the vote was 80%.
Yep.
Right now, barely it would be somewhere between 40 to 50%.
All right.
And you can see that might impact the outcomes.
Right, and we're going to keep a very close eye. As we get more results in from Wayne County, we're going to check back in with you in just a little bit. So don't go too far, but thank you for joining us on the News 10 Now desk. And this is Dr. Abbasi with Michigan State. We're going to definitely check back in with you in about an hour. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. As we continue to follow election coverage, you can get it on WILX.com or streaming on the News 10 app. If you're watching on your cell phone, or if you're maybe watching on your computer and you want to get it on your smart TV, easy to do so. Take a look at your screen right now. These are all the different places that you can get the News 10 Plus app and stream this on your television, so you don't have to hold your phone in your hand all night. That might be a little bit better. Crystal, if we could go back to our other map here, I want to kind of start diving into the results that we're seeing in the state of Michigan. Let's look at the state of Michigan map here. And we are just starting to get some of the results in, although this is not showing it. So at the moment, this is not showing any of the results. So we will not check that, actually. We're going to check the electoral map once again. So there are a number of states that have been called. The most recent one that was called for former President Donald Trump was South Carolina. That came in not too long ago. As you can see right now, former President Donald Trump has 99 electoral votes. Vice President Kamala Harris has 27. This is how many they need to get to the magic number, 270. To clinch the Oval Office starting in January. Kamala Harris needs 243 more. Former President Trump needs 171 more. The states that are highlighted here in the yellow, those are the key battleground states that we're really going to be keeping a close eye on. Reason being, look at what happened in 2020 when a lot of those states, 6 of the 7 that are highlighted there, went to President Joe Biden. But in 2016, many of them went red for former President Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. And those states really made the difference when you look at the outcome of the presidential election. And we're expecting those same 7 states to really be, again, what decides who sits in the Oval Office in January. But is there going to be any surprises? That's another thing that we're going to be watching closely, and we'll find that out throughout the night. So again, this is what has already been decided, and also where we're getting some results in as well. So because these results aren't updating, Crystal, let's switch back to the other map here, and we're going to make sure that we dive into the Michigan results. As you can see, 5% coming in so far. Vice President Kamala Harris with a slight lead in the state of Michigan. We're going to break down some of these numbers for you in more in-depth focus coming up after this short break.
The only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
They say the only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
They say the only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
They say the only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
They say the only constant in life is change, and being proactive is how we successfully adapt to that change.
You know, lobbying is a lot more than just politics. It's about helping organizations not just survive, but thrive.
We advance your business interests with innovation, strategies, and expertise. But more than that, we're committed to improving communities and growing organizations.
Kelly Cawthorn is your partner in shaping change.
Of black voters in this election and what you believe we could see the impact be for not only the state of Michigan, but really nationwide. Vice President Kamala Harris has been pushing the black vote very hard and trying to get as many black voters out to the polls. What do you believe you're going to see after the election is all said and done as far as the impact that black voters do have?
The black vote in Michigan and around the United States is pretty consistent and aligned with the Democratic Party, but early polling from 2022 on has showed us that there may be some major fissions in how people are thinking about solving some of these problems. I still think that we will see a turnout that is pretty consistent with what we've seen in our community previously, both inside Michigan and in the states that surround us.
When you look at Michigan, do you believe that places like Wayne County, Ingham, a lot of the more urban areas that typically have a higher black voter turnout, do you believe that those numbers do you think it's going to surpass what we saw in 2020, or do you think it's going to be comparable?
I think there is a ton of organizing that's going on, both through politics or through politicians and traditional organizers, but also through Black women who are really getting together, both that are aligned with sororities and fraternities, but also that are just invested in trying to get people in their community, Black people and otherwise, out to vote. And so I think that we will see a higher voter turnout than we've seen before, even though we know that there is less enthusiasm than we have seen in past years.
Do you think when Vice President Kamala Harris makes a stop in East Lansing at Michigan State University on Sunday, former President Donald Trump made a stop in Grand Rapids on Monday night, those, there are a lot of visits to the state of Michigan. Do you think that Black voters see the amount of campaign stops, and do you think that plays a role in their decision, or do you think that's kind of water under the bridge at that point?
I think it matters for sure, especially for those who haven't voted. It also matters what politicians say in those moments, and so there have been many ideas and stereotypes that have been cast out about Michiganders and about people who live in Michigan generally that have offended people and swung people in different directions. And so I think that their narratives and their campaigning do still matter, even if it's up to the last minute.
All right, Dr. Brown, thank you so much. We're going to check back in with you in a little bit as well. So we appreciate you joining us here at the News 10 Now desk. Don't go too far. We do have some news into the newsroom. NBC is projecting Delaware for Vice President Kamala Harris. That's not necessarily a surprise either. You can see Delaware, only 3 electoral college votes. About 43.1% of the expected vote is in the state of Delaware. Vice President Kamala Harris with a pretty healthy lead there, and it's expected to grow. So that's not necessarily a surprise. But Kamala Harris now at 52 electoral college votes. Former President Donald Trump at 101. Of course, the race is to 270. We continue to follow the key battleground states in this election as the results flow in. Michigan with a slight lean towards Vice President Kamala Harris at the moment with 57.3%. These numbers have not changed since the last update that we gave you, so still 5.4% of the expected vote is in for the state of Michigan, 5.5% now, so these numbers are updating as we speak. We're expecting this to get very close here. Michigan, the polling is within a couple points at the most, and it's going to be one of those states that we keep a close eye on, as well as Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, a little more of the vote is in Pennsylvania, 9.4% of the total vote. At the moment, Vice President Kamala Harris with a pretty big lead, but look at some of the counties that are reporting results at the moment. Those are some of the more urban areas that you would expect more of a blue turnout versus some of the rural areas which aren't reporting much of their results at this time. So this isn't too much to be concerned about if you're a Republican at the moment, but you can see that Vice President Kamala Harris does have a lead. 10.8% of the expected vote is in there. Now the states, real quick, I want to mention this, the states that are just straight up white, those are where the race is too close to call. There isn't really a lean at the moment either. So those are the states that we're going to be keeping a close eye on. Both these states expected to go to former President Donald Trump in Kansas and Virginia, but we'll keep an eye on that. North Carolina and Georgia, swing states that we'll be keeping an eye on as well. We do have 2 reporters out covering the U.S. congressional race in District 7. We have Tanaya Jordan and Deanna Giles. We're going to start with Tanaya Jordan, who is out covering the Tom Barrett campaign for us tonight. Tanaya, what is the overall feel of that campaign watch party?
Hey, I'm here in Howe at the American Legion, where the Republican Party for Tom Barrett has just started. The watch party for Tom Barrett has just kicked off. Now, as you can see, the crowd has grown tremendously. It's a lot of high energy in here. I've seen just about all ages tonight, from small toddlers to grandparents. Supporters are still rolling in as the polls just closed a little over a half hour ago. Voters tonight say they're seeking new leadership as 2 former state senators square off to replace Slotkin in the U.S. Congress. Now, Republican candidate Tom Barrett, a retired Army helicopter pilot, ran against Slotkin for a seat in the House back in 2022, where he was defeated. This time around, Barrett says he's standing firm on his plans to stop tax dollars from going to Chinese companies, secure the border, get fentanyl off the streets, and remove government from job creators. He was very vocal during his campaign trail on the 4 pillars of security. Now, we will bring you more live coverage on Tom Barrett's watch party here in Howell, here on News 10. Stay with us. I'm Tanaya Jordan reporting live in Howell for News 10.
Tanaya, thank you. Now we're going to Deanna in East Lansing.
And they're just watching the numbers as they come in across the state. Now, as we all have been hearing and learning that this congressional race is very important in taking back the majority of the House. Now, I spoke with a few of the supporters here who walked out or who got out to get people voting tonight, saying that every vote counts and every vote matters, especially in elections like this with highly contested races. So I'll be here all night covering this watch party as it goes on tonight, and we'll have more coverage throughout the night. I'm Deanna Giles. Back to you all.
All right, Deanna and Tanaya, thank you. We're going to be keeping a very close eye on that congressional race between Tom Barrett and Curtis Hertel. Of course, that seat opened up by Alyssa Slotkin opting to run for the U.S. Senate. Let's take a look at some of the election results on the local level as they come in. This is a look at the national level and the popular vote at the moment. But as we look at the U.S. Senate race in the state of Michigan, of course, these are very early results, but the early results right now, Alyssa Slotkin with a slight lead over Mike Rogers in the U.S. Senate race. The Tom Barrett and Curtis Hertel race that we just mentioned, at the moment, Tom Barrett with a slight lead over Curtis Hertel. Of course, not many results in for that race at the moment. As we continue to get more results in for some of these races, we're going to continue to keep you updated. Tim Walberg, the incumbent there in District 5, with a healthy lead over his Democratic challenger, Libby Urban, at the moment. 77% of the vote so far going to Tim Walberg. And then in District 2, John Molinar, the incumbent there, incumbent Republican, with a lead over Michael Lynch, the challenger on the Democratic side in District 2. We have a lot of other millages and bond proposals, sheriff's races, prosecutor, etc., that we're also keeping a very close eye on tonight. And as more of the results come in, we're going to continue to keep you updated. At the moment, Ingham County not reporting any results yet, so no votes in for Ingham County Sheriff, where Scott Rigglesworth, the incumbent, is running against Republican challenger Steve Fox. Once again, nationally, we don't have too many results in at the moment, but the popular vote at the moment going to former President Donald Trump with 53% compared to Kamala Harris's 45%. If you look at those in the state of Michigan, Vice President Kamala Harris with a lead early in the state of Michigan, 233,000 votes compared to former President Trump's 175 roughly thousand votes there. As we look at the electoral map here, as we switch back to our map system, you can see where the leans are at the moment. The slightly red shaded colors, that's a lean towards former President Donald Trump, but not enough where the Associated Press has called that state. And same thing on the slightly leaning blue states. A lead for that candidate, but a lot of these results too early to tell at the moment. And then the white shade means that the difference is too close to make an assessment. Of course, this is Virginia, expected to go red, but could be an interesting state. 41.4% of the expected vote is in Virginia, and former President Donald Trump does have a lead, but it is within a percentage point, which is why that is coming up as a virtual tie in the white shading at the moment. States that have already been called for former President Trump include Indiana, Kentucky, we have the Mississippis, the Arkansas, Florida has been called for former President Donald Trump. If you want to look at the states that have been called for Vice President Kamala Harris, that includes Illinois. Her number just jumped up to 71. Illinois, of course, with 19 electoral college votes there, as you can see. And then a lot of the East Coast states have been called for Vice President Kamala Harris, including New Jersey. New Jersey going to Vice President Kamala Harris. Only 29.8% of the expected vote is in New Jersey, but that's not necessarily a surprise in the state of New Jersey either. So we're going to continue to keep a very close eye on the presidential race and our local races as they come in. The last time we checked, we had just over 5% of the expected vote in Michigan. That number is now at 7.2%, and something to keep a very close eye on, Kent County just starting to report some of its results. Kent County, one of the several counties really across the country that are watched at a national level, because how Kent County votes typically is reflective of how the state of Michigan is going to go in that election. At the moment, very few votes, and only 0.8% of the expected vote is in, and it's a virtual tie in Kent County at the moment. So not much to write home about as far as Kent County is concerned at the moment. But 7.2% of the total expected vote is in, and we have Vice President Kamala Harris with a 55.7% to 42.4% lead in the state of Michigan. A lot of the counties currently reporting, Wayne County, very little of the percentage vote is in for Wayne County, but former President Trump at the moment has that, but Wayne County certainly will probably flip to blue tonight. At the moment, we're going to take a brief break as we will be back in just a couple minutes on the News 10 Now Desk. We have some results coming in the state of Michigan. About 8% of the estimated total vote is in the state of Michigan. Vice President Kamala Harris currently with a slight lead, 55.1 to 43% in the state of Michigan. We're going to look at some of the results coming in our area, very limited at this time. You can see in Eaton County, about 41% of the total vote is in. Former President Donald Trump with a pretty healthy lead in Eaton County at the moment, 57.2% of the vote in Eaton County. In Livingston County, that number even greater, but we barely have any percentage of it. Only 1% of the precincts even reporting at the time, so very limited numbers there. And then in Branch County, about 5% of the precincts reporting. Former President Donald Trump with a very healthy lead in Branch County as well. Not any surprise there. In Kent County is a very important county to watch in the state of Michigan. As I mentioned earlier, how Kent County votes is typically how the state of Michigan will end up voting. Vice President Kamala Harris with a very slight lead over former President Donald Trump. Excuse me, only 2% of the precincts reporting, though, and only 1% of the total vote. So very, very early results in the state of Michigan so far. And as you can see, Southeast Michigan, only a slight percentage reporting in Southeast Michigan at the moment as well. But overall, Vice President Kamala Harris with a slight lead in the state of Michigan. Let's take a look at the Senate race and the early returns in the Senate race. Same percentage, of course, reporting in the state, because it's all across the state here for the Senate. Alyssa Slotkin on the Democratic side with a slight lead over Republican Mike Rogers at the moment as well. When you look at the percentages, you can see the same precincts are reporting, and at the moment at least, Alyssa Slotkin is slightly outperforming the top of the ticket with Vice President Kamala Harris. So 55.4% to Slotkin at the moment, and on the presidential side, 55% flat for Vice President Kamala Harris. And you can see the total votes pretty similar. Most people that are voting for the Senate race or the presidential race are voting for the Senate race as well. So those numbers, not a big deviance in those numbers. As you look at the congressional races, these numbers very early on, only 8% of the estimated total vote is in, but Tom Barrett on the Republican side with a slight lead over Democrat Curtis Hertel, but of course Eaton County, the only one reporting results in there outside of a very small portion of Oakland County at the moment. So those areas going more red. We'll see what Ingham County does, or Clinton County, excuse me, does, and Ingham County to those numbers as they come in. So as we continue to look at all of these different races, we have a lot of these races. If you're looking for a more specialized, localized race, we do have that on our website as well. We're talking in the U of M Board of Regents, MSU Board of Trustees, the State Board of Education, etc. All those races, you can always find those on our website, WILX.com. There's an election results tab on our website. You can just click on that. It's going to take you to all the results that we have so far. Let's take a quick look at the electoral map and the updates on the national race for president. The shaded are the ones that are called at the moment. Of course, as you can see, none of the battleground states have been called yet. And I'm talking about Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Those are some of the key states that we're really going to be keeping a very close eye on. And that is why, as throughout the night, we're going to do this several times. These are the battleground states, and we're going to take a look at who is winning at the moment and by how much. Arizona, of course, not reporting any results at the moment. In Georgia, former President Donald Trump with a slight lead. 63% of the estimated total vote is in the state of Georgia, so that is something to keep an eye on very shortly here. In the state of Michigan, as I mentioned, not many results in, but Vice President Kamala Harris with a lead. North Carolina, former President Donald Trump has a lead with 26% of the estimated vote in. And then in Pennsylvania, you have 13% of the estimated vote in for Vice President Kamala Harris with a lead in Pennsylvania, but a lot of the urban areas reporting quicker so far than the rural areas. So you would expect this is going to be very close in the state of Pennsylvania as well. So this is something we're going to keep a very close eye on. And then how are they doing in the state of Michigan? I mentioned that we're going to keep a close eye on the percentages to see how Vice President Kamala Harris is performing as compared to Alyssa Slotkin. and how is Slotkin performing compared to the top of the ticket for the Democrats, and how Mike Rogers is doing compared to the top of the ticket for the Republicans. So at the moment, you can see Alyssa Slotkin is performing just slightly better than Kamala Harris is in the state of Michigan. 54.7% in the early return for Kamala Harris, and then 55.2% for Alyssa Slotkin early goings there. Mike Rogers, you can see 42%, Donald Trump 43.3%. So at the moment, Alyssa Slotkin is slightly outperforming Kamala Harris, and the opposite can be said about Mike Rogers with former President Donald Trump. We're going to continue to take a look at our viewing area specifically as well, and how our mid-Michigan counties are influencing this election. At the moment, no results in Ingham County. As you can see, Eaton County currently 52.8%. This is updated quite a bit actually since our last update. So now we have 51% of the estimated total vote in for Eaton County. Alyssa Slotkin starting to make some gains. That was pretty lopsided in the early goings of the reporting there. Mike Rogers with 52.8%. If you look at the presidential side, you can see former President Donald Trump performing pretty well so far in Eaton County, 55.3%. And we can also take a look at how that county, kind of shaped out in 2020. You can see former President Donald Trump, 55.3% so far early going. 49.4% former President Donald Trump did win earlier on. We are going to take you out to Novi now. We have Mike Rogers giving a speech in Novi right now at his watch party.
Without Christy, and actually my family, I see them, there they are, all they are right there. We were all celebrating that 80th birthday. They probably didn't realize how important that event was to getting us in the race up in Escanaba. I know Aunt Barb, there she is. Hey, Aunt Barb. Hey. She was going to become the unofficial mascot of the campaign for a while. We appreciated that. When you think about all of the time that we've spent at this and all of the people that said Michigan could not be won, I can't tell you how many times we heard that. I couldn't tell you how many times people said it just isn't competitive enough to be interested in helping out in a state like Michigan. But what we said is, you know what, why we think that's wrong is because we've talked to so many people, and my wife have talked to so many people around this state. And they express the hurt and the pain that we are all going through from the last 4 years of economic hardship, of the fundamental change of our automobile industry. 2,400 layoffs at Stellantis, 1,000 at General Motors, a recent 700 layoffs at Ford. And we thought, boy, there is a better way to do this. Because I believe in every fiber of my being with every Michigan citizen, that ingenuity, that grit, that spirit that makes us who we are. We knew that if we engaged that, we could be competitive in this state. And because of you, all of you, we became the most competitive U.S. Senate seat in the country within the last few weeks. And so my wife, we've been joking along the campaign trail. I say my wife and I decided about, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago that we would split our time. Oh, come on, that's funny, people. Right on, lighten up. She didn't think it was funny either, by the way. She said, don't tell that joke. So she was going to the west side, I was going to the east side, and then we would cross again. And we just started doubling our numbers and doubling our conversations and getting people excited about this race. And something really phenomenal happened about, I don't know, I'm going to get maybe 8 weeks ago now. And it really started with one big endorsement, by the way. We were able to get the endorsement of Michigan's farmers, the Farm Bureau endorsement. They hadn't endorsed a Republican in this seat since 2006. And they decided that this was the time, because we sat down and talked to farmers and we worked through their issues and decided that the regulatory burden that was coming out of Washington, D.C. was a bit too much. And this was the first time in our history we had to import more food than we exported. And as I like to say about farmers, trust me, in politics, they know where BS belongs. It's on the field, right? And when they did that, people sat up and took notice, 45,000 family farmers. 1 million agri-workers across the state took notice. And we could fundamentally start seeing the switch, like, hey, maybe something's going on here. Maybe people are more engaged than they have been in the past. Maybe people are saying, this is not a state to give up on. This is a state to work for. And through the weeks, yeah, you bet. And then we created the best, and I'm not just saying this, the best ground game in the country. Yeah. Just think of that. Last week alone, right leading up to the election, 88,000 doors. We've touched over 3.5 now million voters through voter contact. We haven't done that in years in a statewide race. And we did that not with all the money in the world. We've been outspent, 6-1, I think. What we did it through people power, because people believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed if they hit one more door or dropped one more hanger or had one more conversation, we could be in this race. We could be here to make a difference for our state and our country. And man, did we do it. So the last few polls have been tied. Like I said, don't pay attention to the precincts in and the precincts out. That thing's gonna bounce around all night long. The most important number is at the end of the night. And I do believe this is gonna be a nail biter. And as my folks are telling me, we are likely not even to know the results tonight of this race. That's not great news, but here's what the good news is. That means you have made this race competitive. Yeah. So for all of those people that we've had the good fortune to talk to, the police officers who believed that they have been mistreated over the years, for the farmers who are under siege right now in their ability to put food on our table, for the auto workers who are terrified about their future, for the Teamsters who have talked to me yesterday who said our number of car hauls is going down and we can see it, which means layoffs are coming for them too. For the teachers who are saying, man, we need some help. Hey, there they are. For the men and women of the United States military who are saying, man, please just give us a service worthy of our service. Think of that. All of those people, and we have talked to all of them, who are ready to do something different for this state. That's why this race was important to us, why it was important to my wife, Christy, why it was important to so many of you who got in the rain and the cold some days, and those Saturday mornings when everyone else was doing something fun, you were going to a door and knocking on a door or putting up a sign. That's what this campaign was always about. Christy said it best. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about us. It was really about all of us and what we want for our future, what we can do for the future of our kids. And do we want a hand in America that represents prosperity and freedom and all the things that we know and love? Or is it a country where the government tells you what kind of stove you can have and water heater and what kind of car you can drive?
All right, that is Mike Rogers speaking in Novi at the moment. We're going to have much more from him coming up later on tonight on News 10 Plus and at News 10 at 11 p.m. NBC is now projecting that Texas is going to former President Donald Trump. We'll get those updated electoral numbers for you in just a second. Of course, Texas, not necessarily a surprise, but maybe one of the closer states out of all the red states, or expected red states, I should say. About 9% of the estimated total vote now in for the state of Michigan. As you can say, Vice President Kamala Harris's lead shrinking in the state of Michigan, although, again, these numbers very, very early. Kent County, one that we're going to be watching very closely. Not many votes in Kent County, but you can see it is a neck-and-neck race. 4 votes legitimately so far separating these two candidates in Kent County. So we're going to continue to keep a very close eye on Kent County. As you take a look at the U.S. Senate race, very similar numbers coming in for the Senate race. Again, same percentage, 9% of the estimated total vote is in the Senate race. Alyssa Slotkin with a slight lead over Mike Rogers. You can see, though, that her lead is a little bit bigger over Rogers than Kamala Harris's is over Trump with the number of votes that we have in so far. So that is something that we'll keep our eye on. Let's look real quick at the electoral national map on the gray board. Crystal, if we could take a look at that. These are the updated numbers at the moment. So NBC is projecting that Texas will go towards former President Donald Trump. The Associated Press has not made that distinction yet, so that is why you do not see the 40 electoral votes for Texas included in Donald Trump's 120 yet. So that will jump up quite a bit here once Texas is called by the Associated Press. We continue to have Vice President Kamala Harris at 99 electoral votes at the moment. Again, if you're just joining us, the slightly shaded states are the ones leaning towards that candidate at the moment. You could see out of the battleground states, Georgia currently leaning towards former President Donald Trump, but too early to tell, although we do have 66.2% of the estimated vote in. And it is close. I mean, it's close in Georgia, as you see former President Donald Trump with a lead of about 200,000 votes at the moment. And then you can see North Carolina, another battleground state here. Former President Donald Trump with a lead, although it's very slim, and 39.8% of the expected vote is in North Carolina. And then you see states that we've been talking about for a long time here with Pennsylvania and Michigan. At the moment, very early on, leaning blue. You would expect Missouri probably flips back to red. You would expect that Kansas goes red as well. Those are currently leaning blue, but those will probably end up being red as they normally are. So right now we're going to take a look at Pennsylvania. 16.7% of the expected vote is in. You can see a pretty sizable lead percentage-wise for Vice President Kamala Harris, but not much of the vote is in. You can see a lot of the vote is in some of the more urban areas that you would expect her to perform pretty well in. So that's not necessarily a surprise. That gap will certainly close as we get closer and closer and more votes are tallied. New Hampshire's kind of an interesting state to watch as well. 34.4% of the total vote is in New Hampshire. And at the moment, it is a pretty close race. Vice President Kamala Harris with a lead, albeit pretty slight there, as only about 30,000 votes or just under that currently separate the two candidates. Let's take a look really quickly at some of the local races in mid-Michigan. Many of these races we don't have too many numbers on yet, and that is strictly because Ingham County has not started to report results yet. Clinton County has not started to report results yet, and Jackson County as well. So some of these we're not going to have updates on just yet. So we're going to take a look at really quickly the U.S. Senate race in the state of Michigan. These are the updated numbers. 53% of the total vote with Alyssa Slotkin so far. Mike Rogers with 44%. And a lot of these going to change quite a bit as these counties start reporting results. We are going to check in with reporters that we have spanned out across the state right now. We have Riley Connell and Amaya Kuznicki out covering the presidential race, but talking with some of the Democratic leaders in our state and Republican leaders in our state as well. And we're going to start with Riley, who is with the Democratic state leaders here, talking about the presidential race. So Riley, what is the vibe like there in Detroit?
Yeah, hey Seth. Well, thank you for holding down the fort over at the CTV desk for us and making sure people are updated on those results. You can probably hear from the noise around me, this election watch party is feeling a lot like a party right now. There is a lot of music. People are stepping around getting food and getting beverages. We have had a couple of speakers so far. They are going to come up periodically through the night just to keep us checked in on how the results are looking. Of course, in Michigan, you probably touched on it already. Some of those results are starting to fall in the favor of Vice President Kamala Harris. We do have very few precincts reporting, but people are still pretty excited about that news. They've been hyped up, and they have not lost their momentum and feeling that excitement for the Vice President. But we'll take it back to you at the desk to keep things going over there.
Thank you. Now we're going to send it over to Amaya in Novi with the some of the Republican reaction to the presidential race so far. What is the scene like in Novi there, Amaya?
I'm here at Senate candidate Mike Rogers' watch party where hundreds of people, as you can see, are here to cheer on him and former President Donald Trump. Now, we have been here pretty much all day, and I've talked to a few of Trump supporters and Rogers supporters. And while, you know, they're very hopeful that their candidates will win their races, there's always a little bit of concern. Now, those supporters, they are rooting for Trump and Rogers because they want more secure borders. They want better economy here in Michigan. A lot of them are middle-class families, and they struggle to afford their groceries, and they just say it's time for change. Now, just a few minutes ago, Rogers was up on the stage and supporters were all around holding signs, listening to him talk. And, he ended it with, he's hopeful that he is going to win. And while races are coming in right now for president, Michigan is still up in the air. We're not sure which way our very important swing state is going to go, but as soon as we learn more information, I will relay it back to you. And I know you have Seth there working the touch board to get you all of the latest information for our counties. But, for now, we're here and we're going to be here all night, so I'm tossing it back to you.
All right, Amaya Kuznicki and O'Reilly Connell doing great work for us, covering some of the bigger watch parties in both Novi and in the city of Detroit. We do want a quick update here. The state of Ohio has been called for former President Donald Trump by the Associated Press. 51.5% of the expected vote is in for the state of Ohio. That is 17 electoral votes going to former President Donald Trump, and his number continues to rise here tonight. He's at 137, and as I mentioned, NBC has projected that Texas will go to former President Trump as well. As soon as the Associated Press does that, that will add another 40 for former President Donald Trump to get him up to 177 electoral college votes. Vice President Kamala Harris currently at 99, and we are continuing to watch those battleground states that we've been talking about all night here. Pennsylvania with only 18.6% of the estimated vote in, currently with a lead for Vice President Harris, but more of the urban areas have been reporting results so far, so that's not necessarily a surprise. And the state of Michigan, these are slowly trickling in, but we are up to 9.8% of the estimated vote already in Michigan. As you see, Vice President Kamala Harris with a lead in the state of Michigan, but it is early. You could tell it's early because Wayne County currently is shaded red with 0.1% of the estimated vote in. That will surely flip blue at some point tonight. So the state of Michigan, something that we're watching very closely. We're also watching our local results. If we go back into the state, though, you could tell not many of the counties in the mid-Michigan area are currently reporting results, which is why some of our local races, we don't have a great idea yet of which way those races are leaning at the moment because we just don't have the vote totals in. You do see a slight shading for Ingham County, though. So Ingham County has started to report results. That is new just in the last 3 or 4 minutes or so. So Ingham County, again, only 2.8% of the estimated vote is in Ingham County. At the moment, pretty close between Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump. You would expect Ingham County probably goes blue at some point tonight. So we'll keep a very close eye on that. Crystal, we could switch back to our other dashboard here. I want to take a look at how the candidates are doing not only in the state of Michigan, but how they're doing compared to 2020. 2020, of course, President Joe Biden won the state of Michigan after 2016, former President Donald Trump won it over Hillary Clinton. And Joe Biden in the state of Michigan in 2020 got 50.6% of the total vote. At the moment, early results, Kamala Harris was 52.4%. If you look more in-depth at the mid-Michigan region, let's zoom into the mid-Michigan region here, you can see Ingham County, these are very preliminary results. Ingham County was pretty heavily Democratic here in 2020 with 65.2% of the vote going to President Joe Biden. So these numbers likely will go more towards Vice President Kamala Harris as the results continue to come in. But these are something we're going to keep an eye on, including Eaton County. In Eaton County right now, you can see more results are in for Eaton County than they are for Ingham at the moment. Former President Donald Trump with a healthy lead at the moment, but look how close the race was in Eaton County in 2020. These numbers will likely even out once again in this election. So we're going to be keeping a very close eye on Eaton County, especially as some of the more eastern-sized Delta Township start coming in and reporting those results as well. Livingston County, very heavily Republican county, former President Donald Trump with over 60% of the vote in 2020. At the moment, 64.4%. So how does he compare to 2020 as far as Donald Trump is concerned? That's one of the things we'll be keeping a very close eye on. As you can see, about half the results may be in for Livingston County at the moment. Let's zoom back out here. We are keeping a very close eye on the U.S. Senate race as well. And at the moment, again, 10% now in, so this number does continue to rise. 10% is now in, and we have 52.8% of the vote for Alyssa Slotkin. When you compare that to the top of the ticket, Alyssa Slotkin at the moment performing slightly better than the top of the ticket at 52.3%. So about half a percentage point difference so far between Alyssa Slotkin and Vice President Kamala Harris. And as you can see, the vote totals, they're pretty similar. If people are going to vote for the presidential race, they're typically going to vote for the Senate race as well. So that is something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. How do each of the candidates perform compared to the top of their ticket? That's something we'll be certainly keeping an eye on. Let's look at Congressional District 7 at the moment. This is, of course, the race that we do have reporters out at tonight. Republican Tom Barrett, his campaign, and then Democrat Curtis Hertel vying for the seat that Alyssa Slotkin's actually leaving open by running for the U.S. Senate. So that's who currently holds this position. Either of these candidates, it could be a big role in the U.S. House, depending on who is going to have power of the House, could really hinge on the result of this race. As you can see here, very preliminary results are in. Tom Barrett polling pretty well with 23% of the estimated vote is in, but many Ingham County votes have yet to be counted, and you would expect Ingham County, some of the more areas around the city of Lansing and East Lansing, would probably move Curtis Hertel up in that race. So that's something that we're going to keep a very close eye on at the moment. Again, Tom Barrett polling at 60.9%. In District 5, you have the Republican incumbent Tim Walberg with a healthy lead over his Democratic challenger Libby Urban. So that is with about 4% of the estimated total vote in, 11% of the precinct. So there's still a long ways to go there, but at the moment, Tim Walberg with a pretty healthy lead. And the incumbent Republican John Molinar in District 2 with a pretty healthy lead over Democratic challenger Michael Lynch at the moment. But as you can see, very little vote is in this race at the moment as well. So these are all races we're going to be keeping a very close eye on. Again, only 10% of the vote is counted so far in the state of Michigan. So that's something that we're just going to have to continue to keep a very close eye on. Let's look real quick at the key states. This is what we're going to be, these numbers are actually a little bit old, so don't focus on those. We'll focus on these, the key states and how each candidate is performing. With about 70% of the total vote in Georgia, former President Donald Trump has 221,000 vote lead over Vice President Kamala Harris. Some of the more urban areas have not reported yet, so that might tighten up still. In Michigan, Vice President Kamala Harris with a slight lead, of course, with only 11% of the vote in. North Carolina, slight lead for former President Donald Trump. Pennsylvania, a lead at the moment for Vice President Kamala Harris. And then Wisconsin just starting to report results tonight, a slight lead for former President Donald Trump in Wisconsin. So those are all, and of course Arizona has not started reporting, neither has Nevada. These are the key states, though, that we're going to be keeping a very close eye on tonight. So in the state of Michigan, more numbers just came in, 11% now, 53.7% to Vice President Kamala Harris and 44.4% to former President Donald Trump. So these numbers, again, as you compare to the top of the ticket, you see Kamala Harris 53.7. Now, Alyssa Slotkin in the Senate race polling just below that, but as you can see, these numbers actually have not been updated. So more numbers are in for the presidential race, and they're coming in at the moment for the Senate race. I would expect these numbers to update in just a matter of seconds. So we're going to continue to keep a very close eye on that. We are lucky enough to be joined by Tina Barton now at the News 10 Now desk. Tina, you are an election expert with years talking about a clerk in Rochester Hills, and you've worked on election integrity throughout your entire career. We want to talk about election integrity and the focus in 2020. We saw a lot of criticism about the election process, election safety, security, integrity. Are we going to see that again in this election, do you think? And how is the election process from your eyes?
Well, I think certainly we learned a lot of lessons in 2020 of things that we could get better at. Some of those things we did better in our processes, implemented new things that we would do. We implemented new security measures, had CISA come out, do site assessments with their election security advisors. We also looked at just how can we train and we implemented tabletop exercises all across the entire state, which is something that we had never done before, working through not only security exercises, but also process exercises, if there were to be a power outage or something like that, all the way to also looking at what if there were to be an unknown substance that would come through the mail. So clerks have spent a lot of time over the last 4 years doing more training than I've ever known them to do in my career, spending more time prepping, preparing. They've also spent a lot of time becoming more transparent. How can they make sure that the public can see what they're doing, understand what they're doing, and really be engaged in the process?
And when you look at this election, we've already seen a couple of accusations from former President Donald Trump. We had a story on our website, you can find it at WILX.com, where he said there was massive cheating already in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're already seeing it a little bit, but do you think that the election integrity and safety is something that we're going to see called into question in the coming days following this election?
I think we've certainly seen a precedence for that being set, right? But I think what is really different this time is I think election officials have gotten a lot better about doing crisis communication. They've also gotten a lot better with debunking things as soon as that conspiracy theory or even that misrepresentation of information comes out. In this situation you were just talking about, there was a Philadelphia commissioner that immediately responded to that tweet that was put out there and corrected that information. And I think we've gotten a lot better about it. We are expecting it this time, and so we're prepared for that. In 2020, we were not. I think the loser, no matter who it is going to probably put some misinformation out there. Their teams might, their supporters might, and I think we're going to be looking at how do we then present truth to the American public so we can boost the confidence in our election process.
How difficult, you were a clerk, how difficult is that, or would that be, to deal with as a clerk when people are saying that what you've done and what you've worked hard on is not like they're calling into question the work of the clerks as well. So right. How difficult would that be to deal with as a clerk?
It's really hard. Number one, it is your integrity that's called into question, but these are also your constituents that you care really about in your, a lot about in your community. You want to make sure you're doing a good job for them, the community that you represent, your staff, the time and effort that you've put into that. But you also have to understand election officials, most clerks, they don't have a PIO. They don't have a public information officer. So it often feels like this David and Goliath moment where you have a lot of these larger entities that have attorneys on their sides, that have communication experts on their side, and then you have the election official, because we're very decentralized here in Michigan, where we have the cities and townships running the elections. And again, they don't have the luxury of having their own PIO and their own communication officer on staff. So a lot of times they're fighting this battle on their own, trying to get the right and correct information out there.
I have one more question for you, and that is, for the first time ever, clerks were able to pre-process absentee ballots. The idea and the goal was to have the results in a little bit faster than what we saw in 2020. Of course, 2020 was a little bit of an aberration because there was so many absentee ballots with COVID, right? But as a former clerk, does that help? Would that have helped in that situation for you? And do you think that that will lead to faster results in Michigan?
Absolutely. And we actually petitioned for that. So the clerks actually before 2020 were asking for pre-processing. We just couldn't get the legislature to do it at that time. And the Michigan people, decided we'll take it in our own hands and we'll vote it in. So, and having this, all these electoral changes that we're putting into place, and now this pre-processing that clerks can do, a lot of these changes you've seen, like with the early voting, things like that, some of that has been brought about by constitutional changes by the Michigan public. Some we've seen some legislative changes, but they've all been for the good, and what they will do is help us get those results out faster.
All great. Thank you so much for your expertise, Tina, and for joining us in the News 10 Now desk. She really has a lot of background in this, and we really value your opinion here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah. We do have Rhode Island for Harris, 4 electoral votes. We did mention that just a few moments ago, NBC calling that for Kamala Harris. Numbers continue to roll in here in the state of Michigan. 12% of the total vote now in. And as you can see in the U.S. Senate race, Alyssa Slotkin, 53.8% of the vote so far over Mike Rogers. And then as you look at the presidential race, 53.4% for Vice President Kamala Harris over former President Donald Trump. We are seeing more and more of these counties start to come in, so more and more results and more counties are starting to report those results. Of course, Western UP What time is it? 9:24. They just closed their polls 24 minutes ago. So the Western UP we can expect to be a little bit delayed just because they are in the central time zone. But as you look at the mid-Michigan area, we're now getting results from Gratiot County, Eaton, Ingham, Livingston, Branch, Lenawee, Washtenaw. Many of these only reporting a small sliver of the amount of votes that were expected over the course of time. But that is something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. If you look at Washtenaw, typically a very heavy blue county. Right now, 63.8% of the vote going towards Vice President Kamala Harris. President Joe Biden did very well in Washtenaw County, though, 72.7% in 2020. So we'll see how Vice President Kamala Harris stacks up once more of the vote comes in. As you look at the U.S. Senate race in Washtenaw County, 63.2% going to Alyssa Slotkin, 63.8% for Kamala Harris in the presidential election. So in Washtenaw County specifically, Kamala Harris outperforming a little bit. And you could see Donald Trump outperforming Mike Rogers just a little bit in Washtenaw County as well. So those are some of the races we're keeping a very close eye on. Let's look at the state totals at the moment. You can see the presidential election here on the bottom. 374,000 votes in for Vice President Kamala Harris, 315,000, almost 16,000 there for former President Donald Trump. And similar vote totals for the Senate race as well, with Alyssa Slotkin having just a slightly larger lead than Vice President Kamala Harris. So these numbers continue to come in, and that's what we're going to continue to show you. We're getting some questions on our live feed about Ingham County being red. That's just what is coming in so far, and as you can see, only 4,500 votes roughly tallied in Ingham County. Look at how many did this in. That's for both of them. So at the moment, there's very little results coming in for Ingham County. Let me show you how they both did in 2020 in Ingham County. In Ingham County in 2020. 94,000 votes for President Joe Biden, 47,000 votes for former President Donald Trump. So as more of these results come in, if Ingham County is relatively the same as it was to 2020, you'll see Vice President Kamala Harris start performing better in Ingham County. Just a very small portion of the votes are in Ingham County. And the same can be said about a lot of these counties. Not a very large percentage of the votes are in. As you can see, if we're expecting similar voter turnout, we're probably going to have hundreds of thousands more votes coming in from some of these counties as well. A reminder, we did have some questions on our stream. You can continue to ask questions. I'll try to get to them as much as I can as we're live here on News 10 Plus. So continue to ask those questions on the Facebook feed or however you may be watching, YouTube, etc. That is just one of the things. So the reason we brought up Ingham County is because someone asked about it. They were surprised that it's red. It's red because it is so early. If we can actually zoom out, you will also see, if you are wondering why Ingham County is red, you'll also see Wayne County at the moment is red. We know Wayne County will very much go towards Vice President Kamala Harris. It was pretty staunch towards Joe Biden, 68.5% in 2020. So we'll expect Wayne County to go blue as well. Just so far with the early returns, former President Donald Trump with a lead in Wayne County. We do not think that will probably hold up at this time. So this is the look at the statewide race. Again, not a whole lot of results are in at the moment, but we're expecting more and more to come in as the night goes on. 12% is about what we're at the moment. So we have got reporters out covering the Senate race, the congressional race in District 7 with Tom Barrett and Curtis Hertel. Again, 26% of the estimated vote is in for this race, but not much of Ingham County. So we'll see how these numbers stack up. Republican Tom Barrett currently with a lead over Curtis Hertel. The District 7 seat, this is open because Alyssa Slotkin is running for the U.S. Senate race against Mike Rogers. So these two candidates are both vying for Alyssa Slotkin's seat. So we'll see how that all shakes out. We do not have any data in yet for Clinton County or Shiawassee County. So those are two that we're going to continue to keep a close eye on as well. As we zoom back out here and look at the presidential election. Actually, Crystal, if we could flip to our other map system here. We're going to take a look at the national map at the moment. We do have an update for you. We do have former President Donald Trump now. The Associated Press has officially called Texas. We mentioned that NBC had projected Texas towards former President Donald Trump. That has now been called by the Associated Press as well. So you can see 178 Electoral College votes so far for former President Donald Trump. Vice President Kamala Harris currently at 99. And really quickly, I want to explain what you're looking at on this graphic. The hard shaded red, those are states that have already been called for former President Donald Trump. So you can see where he's performing pretty well. You already have Ohio, Florida, Texas, some of those bigger states going towards former President Donald Trump. And then on the Democratic side, no surprise here, but you have New York, Illinois, some of the more East Coast states with New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont. So some of those states, not necessarily a surprise there for the Democrats either. We do not have any swing state necessarily called at the moment. All of them are still too close to call. The one that will likely get called first would be either North Carolina or Georgia. And I say that because we already have 74.6% of the estimated vote in for the state of Georgia at the moment. A slight lead for former President Donald Trump in the state of Georgia, but still about a quarter of those votes need to come in. And you can see most of the counties are at least reporting some results at this point in the state of Georgia. So this may be one of the first swing states to announce what the results are in that state. The other state we're closely watching outside of Michigan, of course, is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, very contested race. 25.8% of the total vote, expected total vote, is in at the moment. Vice President Kamala Harris with a lead in Pennsylvania. But as I mentioned, some of the first counties that started reporting were some of the more urban counties. So that was not necessarily a surprise that she jumped out to a lead in Pennsylvania. We'll continue to keep a very close eye on Pennsylvania. The state of Wisconsin, another swing state, just starting to report results. Only 10.9% of the vote or expected vote is in Wisconsin. At the moment, former President Donald Trump with a slight lead over Vice President Kamala Harris. But again, not many votes are in that race. And at the moment, you can see in 2020, this went to President Joe Biden in 2020. Former President Donald Trump won Wisconsin in 2016. Certainly, he's hoping to flip it back red tonight. We'll see if he's able to do so. Other states that we're keeping an eye on at the moment, New Mexico currently with a slight lean toward Vice President Kamala Harris. Not expected to go blue necessarily. 11% of the votes, so not many votes in there. Only 5 electoral votes in that state. The other state where people were keeping a close eye on is New Hampshire. At the moment, Vice President Kamala Harris has a decent lead, about 10%, with 38% of the total votes or expected total votes in New Hampshire. So that is something we'll continue to watch. Again, if you're looking at these numbers, this is the big one. Each candidate needs to get to 270 to win the Oval Office and take the Oval Office in January. We might not know, we probably won't know tonight which candidate will be in the Oval Office in January. At least that is what the Associated Press is reporting. We shall see. Results in Michigan likely will come in a little bit earlier in this election than they did in 2020 due to early absentee ballot processing being allowed for clerks for the first time, and 9 days of early in-person voting certainly helping as well as far as getting those results in. So that is one of the reasons why, and you just see, I mentioned that we didn't expect New Mexico to go blue. Now it is a slight lean toward former President Donald Trump with 13% of the total vote in. So these are all things that we're continuing to keep a close eye on. Georgia, likely one of the first swing states that we're going to get results from, as 75% of the expected vote is in. That lead for former President Donald Trump, though, pretty slight at the moment, just about 5%. Right now. Harris has won New York. We did pass that along, and not necessarily a surprise at all with New York there. Right now, about 34% of the estimated vote is in, 65.2% so far for Vice President Kamala Harris. You can see the check mark there. That is because the Associated Press has called that race. So former President Donald Trump losing New York. That's 28 electoral votes. Already was included in her 99 that we previously told you about. Well, we see the results continuing to come in from the state of Wisconsin. Vice President Kamala Harris just took the lead with the last 5 percentage points or so of expected votes that have come in. So this is one that we're continuing to closely watch. Michigan, another one, 12.5% of the total vote has come in. We mentioned earlier Ingham County. Someone mentioned that it was red at the time. We barely had any results in. Now Ingham County with 9.6%. Already looking, leaning towards Vice President Kamala Harris. Again, very minimal votes in here, but a 3,000 vote lead, 60% to about 40% for former President Donald Trump. So these votes continue to come in. Kent County, another one that we're going to be keeping a very close eye on. This is expected to be very, very close. At the moment, Vice President Kamala Harris has a large lead. That probably means that the Grand Rapids area starting to report more results than some of the surrounding areas. Pretty soon we're going to talk with another legal expert with the Cooley Law School, Michael McDaniel. He's going to be coming in and talking about the security, threats around the security, or threats around the election and some of the election integrity. We're going to talk to him. He's an expert with the Cooley Law School. Those stories and more coming up on the News 10 Now desk. We'll continue to look at the local results as well. Let's take a look at some of the local races, and we are getting more of the local results in at the moment, which is why we want to take a look at some of these. This is the national presidential race. You can see the popular vote at the moment going to former President Donald Trump. In Michigan, at the moment, Vice President Kamala Harris has a lead. Early results, the Ingham County Sheriff. These results actually have not been reported yet. Jackson County Clerk, we don't have that one in yet either. So let's look at the U.S. Senate race in the state of Michigan. Alyssa Slotkin with a slight lead over Mike Rogers at the moment. And then the other one that we've been following closely, we do have reporters at both the watch parties for Republican Tom Barrett and Democrat Curtis Hertel vying for the open seat left open by Alyssa Slotkin going for the U.S. Senate spot. Right now, that race very early ongoing, but Tom Barrett with a lead with 58% of the total vote at the moment over Curtis Hertel. In District 5, the Republican incumbent Tim Walberg with a pretty healthy lead, 69% of the expected vote, or 69% of the vote that is in has gone towards Tim Walberg in District 5, and then the incumbent Republican John Molinar with 58% of the vote so far in District 2. All of these races we're keeping a very close eye on as we get later on in the night. These local results will be inputted as more of these counties and precincts start reporting. So those are just some of the things we're keeping a very close eye on. We do have Michael McDaniel joining us once again on the News 10 Now desk, expert with the Cooley Law School, and we're going to talk about the election safety, election integrity, and some of the threats that we've seen regarding the election and maybe polling places. We saw, briefly want to catch our viewers up on the threats called into a number of polling locations in several states, including Michigan, that Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson said was quickly traced back to Russia. Hoax calls just threatening polling places. What do you make of some of those hoax calls that were made to polling locations in Michigan and other states as well?
Well, I think it's an attempt to sort of suppress voting. And that's why I think we saw it in the 4 battleground states that we mentioned earlier. And I think when you combine that with the fact that we saw dozens of fake videos that were put out through social influencers, really, that were paid by Russian propagandists to put these out there, I think we're seeing sort of a concerted attack on the U.S. democratic system here by Russia as our greatest adversary. And I think we should be concerned about that, and we should resist that. And I also hope that all your viewers are going to look at this stuff with a grain of salt and not accept something just because they see it out there from some social media influencer that they may have followed in the past.
And misinformation is something that certainly the state of Michigan, the government officials at least have been pushing, look for the real facts, the real data. How much of a role does misinformation play in an election like this, and how big of a problem is it in your eyes?
It's been increasing over the last 3 elections, because we've had such an increase in social media. Once you got that tipping point where instead of looking at mainstream media, such as us here today, we start people getting it from podcasts and getting it from online sources, which cannot be verified quickly, then it's become a real problem. And I think that we really have to educate the people that they have to really question everything, and they have to
corroborate what they hear from a number of different sources. If you hear it only on social media or only from one podcast, don't believe that it's true until you have verified it with other sources as well.
We have not heard of any updated threats to polling locations or anything like that. Of course, the polls have closed in the state of Michigan, including the Western Upper Peninsula, which was in Central Time. So if we hear of anything else regarding any threats to the election or any threats to polling locations in Michigan, we're going to check back in with you once again. Oh, we just did. All right, we're passing a note along to the News 10 Now desk. Let's read it for you.
What do we got?
Judge has ordered polling places to remain open an extra 2 hours in 9 different precincts in eastern Arizona County following a rocky start to Election Day that included malfunctioning equipment and a lack of printed ballots. The Superior Court judge agreed to keep the polls open at the request of the Navajo Nation, which filed a lawsuit asking for extended hours due to the problems. Meanwhile, bomb threats to polling places at schools in neighboring Navajo County prompted some to close momentarily and one to evacuate and send students home for the day. They received those bomb threats through email at 4 different locations, including at least 3 polling sites. They determined the threats were not credible, which was similar to what we saw at the polling locations here in Michigan.
Yeah.
Not credible. They were quickly traced to Russia as hoax calls. How concerning is it, though, that we're seeing this not only in Michigan, but in other states as well?
Right. I was just about to say, though the polls have closed here, they haven't closed on the West Coast. And so that's exactly what we're seeing. The Navajo Nation is a big voting bloc in Arizona for the Democratic Party. So it's very interesting that they're being targeted in these hoax calls that we're seeing now.
Okay, if we hear anything more of that, we're going to continue to check back in with you throughout the night. We really appreciate your expertise here on the News 10 Now desk. Illinois to Harris, 19 electoral votes. We did mention that here. No surprise here with Illinois going blue. It typically does go blue. Vice President Kamala Harris with 57.3% of the votes so far in Illinois, and 51.4% of the total votes have been counted in the state of Illinois so far. No states have been called recently in this election as far as the nationwide scale. We are continuing to follow the key battleground states, and that would be Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. We mentioned the polling locations with the threats in Arizona. That just came in that we just told you about. And then Nevada. The polling locations have not closed in those western states yet, so that is something that we'll keep an eye on. It won't take long, of course, for California to be called for Vice President Kamala Harris, a very traditionally blue state there. That's 54 electoral votes, so that number will get a little bit closer as we continue. One of the first swing states that we will likely get final results in is Georgia. 77.1% of the total expected vote is in the state of Georgia. Vice President Kamala Harris trailing former President Donald Trump with 52.4% of the vote for Trump and 47% so far for Vice President Kamala Harris. Still too close to call. The Associated Press, NBC, CNN, all of them saying this is not yet called, but former President Donald Trump is performing well in Georgia at the moment. Same can be said about North Carolina. 61.4% of the expected vote is in North Carolina, and right now former President Donald Trump with a lead in North Carolina as well. Slightly smaller just percentage-wise, with about 200,000, just less than 200,000 total votes. Making up the difference in North Carolina at the moment. Let's see if we have any updated numbers from the state of Michigan. 13.2%, so slightly more votes are in. This gap has been about the same since we started getting about 10% or more of the vote in. 52.9% of the votes so far in the state of Michigan going to Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump with 45.3% of the total vote. We will keep a very close eye on Kent County, 12.6% of the vote in Kent County. Vice President Kamala Harris performing well so far. We expect this to be pretty close in Kent County, though. And then Wayne County, only 0.7%. So when you see Wayne County, you see it's red. It will go blue. It always has gone blue in the Detroit area. But at the moment, with only 0.7%, former President Donald Trump with a slight lead in Wayne County. Ingham County is starting to report more results. 9.6% of the vote is in Ingham County. At the moment, Vice President Kamala Harris performing well in Ingham County with 59.7% of the vote in so far in Ingham County. Really quickly, I do want to take a look at the U.S. Senate race. We're going to take a look at some of our localized races here once this loads. and we're going to see how Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers are doing compared to the top of the ticket. This is the national numbers at the moment. Excuse me. This is the Michigan numbers at the moment for the presidential race. You can see 52% for Harris, like I mentioned, 45% for Trump. And then when you look at that compared on the state level with the U.S. Senate race, very similar numbers here. 52% for Alyssa Slotkin, 44% for Mike Rogers. So if you have any takeaway at the moment, not a large percentage of the votes are in, but former President Donald Trump slightly outperforming Mike Rogers if you're looking at the top of the ticket versus the trickle-down effect throughout the rest of the ticket in the state of Michigan. So we're going to continue to follow this for you as we see the total popular vote. These numbers continue to update, as you just saw. Right now, a slight lead for former President Donald Trump in the popular vote, but that is, again, those numbers still coming in. Right now, we're going to toss it to a very quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back on the News 10 Now Desk.
country that we are determined.
All right, welcome back into the News 10 Now Desk. We are going to send it out to Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who is speaking to the media right now in Detroit, recapping Election Day here in the state of Michigan.
Partnerships were critical to our success today. Our office has worked with business leaders, faith leaders, and many others to reach voters in communities all across the state with the information that they need to make their voices heard. And I'm honored to be joined tonight by Reverend Dr. Stephen Bland Jr., here with me tonight to talk about the work that he led this year to empower faith leaders to be trusted voices for voters in this election. Pastor Bland, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Secretary of State Benson, and to all of you tonight who have gathered on this early night, because it's going to be a lot longer than this. But I'm thankful that we tonight can pause at least and be grateful that in the state of Michigan that we've made at least voting.
All right, that was Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson speaking in Detroit. We're going to continue to check in with our crews who are live out across the state of Michigan covering some of these big campaigns, as well as hearing from the Secretary of State as we have more information coming into the newsroom. So we'll continue to update you on those races and as whatever Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says in that press conference. The numbers continue to update here. The state of Michigan, 14% of the estimated total vote is now in. 6% of total precincts are reporting. You can see Vice President Kamala Harris with a lead so far in the state of Michigan. Again, this is how it looked in 2020 when all was said and done. So we have a lot of votes to go here. Only 440,000 for Vice President Kamala Harris and just under 400,000 for former President Donald Trump. Those numbers should be over 2.5 million likely for both candidates once all is said and done today. So we'll continue to keep a very close eye on the presidential race and the U.S. Senate race. Again, about 52.3% for Slotkin over Rogers right now. Slightly overperforming the top of the ticket is Alyssa Slotkin right now, 52.3% compared to 51.8%. These numbers continue to fluctuate, though, so it's about the same as far as the ticket is concerned. Congressional District 7, Tom Barrett and Curtis Hertel fighting for the seat left open by Alyssa Slotkin. We do have an update. NBC has called Kansas for former President Donald Trump. That is 6 electoral votes. Let's go to the electoral map real quick. This is what NBC has called, which is a little bit different than what the Associated Press has called so far, but NBC has called these states. At the moment, the electoral college or electoral vote count is 191 for former President Donald Trump and 81 for Vice President Kamala Harris. We are keeping a very close eye on the swing states. None of the swing states have been decided yet or called by the Associated Press or NBC. As soon as one of those makes a call on one of those races, we will be very quick to update you on that. Let's take a look, though, at where they stand in these key battleground states. You can see Arizona, polls still open in Arizona, so they haven't reported any information there. Georgia, 80% of the vote is in former President Donald Trump with a 215,000 vote lead in the state of Georgia. In our state of Michigan, Kamala Harris with a slight lead with 15% of the vote reported in Michigan. Nevada, polls still open there. North Carolina, former President Donald Trump with 64% of the estimated total vote in. Has just under 200,000 vote lead in North Carolina. And in Pennsylvania, a really key battleground state here. You can see the numbers updating in real time. 38% of the estimated total vote is in Pennsylvania. A slight lead for Kamala Harris there, and a slight lead for Kamala Harris in Wisconsin. Wisconsin will be another good one to watch here. 33% of the estimated total vote is in Wisconsin. Again, these are NBC's numbers, which will look a little bit different than the Associated Press. So I want to preface that, but that map is going to be updated throughout the morning or throughout the evening as well. So let's look at the state of Michigan again real quick here as more numbers continue to funnel in. We're at 15%. The gap narrowing just a little bit. Vice President Kamala Harris currently has 51.6% of the total vote in the state of Michigan. These numbers continue to go up. Vice President or Joe Biden, you can see in 2020, you got 50.6% of the total votes in the state of Michigan. It was a close race in Michigan, decided by just about 150,000 votes or so. We'll see what this ends up in this election. Let's take a look at the mid-Michigan area. Oh, we're getting a Okay, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is back at the podium. We're going to take her speech live in Detroit.
Show up proudly to cast their vote in this historic election and participate in our democracy. My morning started with a dance party at my local precinct here in Detroit. And then as I traveled to polling places all throughout the state, I encountered enthusiastic, joyful gatherings of voters who were excited to participate in this election. You know, Michiganders stepped up and showed up today. And I was particularly inspired by the number of moms and dads who made it a family affair, bringing their young kids with them to vote and prepare these future voters to proudly inherit our democracy. You know, one government teacher in Cadillac brought his entire class of students with him to witness the voting process. And I saw more young people show up than I ever remember seeing in any election cycle, many of whom were excited to vote in their first election ever. Nearly 22,000 Michiganders registered and voted today, many of them under the age of 30. And not to be outdone, some septuagenarians were also first-time voters today, and others who showed up in their 90s had been voting in every election since they turned 18. Those were the winners of this election. They are our success story. The record-breaking number of Michiganders who cast ballots and the clerks and election workers whose efforts made it possible for them to do so. That's our victory, and that's what we're celebrating tonight. Now, we'll know more in the coming days and hours about how this election turned out. But as of right now, we know we are on track for record-breaking turnout in this election. We already know more than 3.4 million votes were cast throughout the mail or early voting process, including the mail-in ballots received today. And of the 2.3 million ballots that were sent to voters who voted from home, 94% were already returned as of 7:30 p.m. tonight, and the vast majority of those had been processed and fed into the tabulators before today, with the rest expected to be tallied in the coming hours as clerks check in the final ones submitted to their offices that were submitted to their offices before 8 p.m. today. So we'll know for sure in the hours ahead how many Michiganders turned out to vote in person today, but we expect it was at least as many who showed up 4 years ago. And from our team members across the state, we know that things also went smoothly in precincts across Michigan. Any issues were minor and resolved quickly and were not widespread but isolated. Polling places were by and large calm and efficient and energetic. People were excited to vote today. The tireless work of more than 1,600 local clerks and thousands of election workers all across the state made those celebrations possible, made that pride possible. And, you know, let me just say something about our clerks for 1 second. They have adapted to a plethora of new voting laws in record-breaking speed. They implemented new processes. They stood strong against attempts to sow confusion and doubt in the integrity of their work, and did it all with a smile and with pride to be participating in this historic election. So that's what we're celebrating tonight. It's no question that our democracy has prevailed because of the people in the process today and the voters who took advantage of their options to vote in this election. Now, it may take a few more hours before we know for sure the results of this presidential election here in Michigan. I'm hopeful that we will be the first of the 7 battleground states to announce our unofficial results, and we'll know that more in the hours ahead. But we're on track to have those results by tomorrow, if not sooner. Already every ballot voted in person and cast today has been tabulated. And while over 94% of the ballots voted from home were returned, there are still thousands that are left to be processed and are being processed and tabulated as we speak. There are another 6,000 ballots still outstanding from military and overseas voters. And under our law, as long as those ballots are postmarked by today, they will still count as long as they are received by Tuesday, November 12th. So with those 6,000 ballots outstanding, it may determine some of the closer races in our state, but the bottom line is we have a clear process under the law to make sure every eligible vote is counted, and that process takes time. Election workers across our state are processing, verifying, and counting ballots, and they're double-checking the totals before reporting them to the public. That will take as long as it needs to take in order to ensure we are delivering complete and accurate results. Nevertheless, thanks to the remarkable efficiency of our clerks and election workers, tonight there are no reports of long lines of voters remaining across the state, and there are no disruptions or fires, literally or metaphorically, to put out. And our tabulation process is going even more efficiently than expected. For example, in Flint, only 1,000 mail-in ballots remain to be processed and tabulated tonight. I just came from Huntington Place in Detroit, where workers there finished tabulating every ballot received before 4 p.m. today, and the process to tabulate the remaining few thousand ballots over the next few hours will unfold more smoothly and efficiently than I think we had anticipated going into today. It shows that their preparation and their pre-processing really worked to ensure a smooth process this year. If you've been to Huntington Place today, as many have, you observe, to the extent that there are law enforcement there, they are there only to observe and protect the people who are protecting democracy. And whether it's observers or challengers from either side of the aisle, or people, election workers tabulating ballots, everyone is following the rules. Everyone is respecting each other. Everyone is observing the process or being a part of the process. And as a result, we're seeing the smooth and efficient, secure tabulation of those absentee ballots in Detroit. And even in Warren, I am told there are only a few thousand mail-in ballots remaining to count, even though they just began doing that today. So to ensure this efficiency continues, we do want everyone to respect this process. It's critical in these next few hours as the work to protect and tabulate the voice of our voters is done. We want to ensure that every valid ballot is counted and that we give space to everyone working to do that work. At the same time, we don't want to give space to anyone who attempts to make premature declarations about the outcome of the election in Michigan, be it a candidate, a news outlet, or an unverified rumor on social media. We need to ensure that all votes are tabulated to ensure the democratic process unfolds as the voters intend and the law stipulates. So while it is possible there will be races or ballot questions where results, even minimal returns,
all right, so that is Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson speaking to the media in Detroit this evening. And a few things that I wanted to highlight that she said. Benson believes that Michigan is on pace for record-breaking turnout in this election. She believes that election results in Michigan will be known by tomorrow, if not sooner. And she's hoping that Michigan is the first battleground state to report unofficial election results. We shall see in the coming hours if that is true. A couple updates from NBC calling a few more states for former President Donald Trump, including Montana and Utah. Combined 10 Electoral College votes in those states going to former President Donald Trump. So he is at 201 at the moment from NBC's count, and Vice President Harris is at 81. Again, a lot of these key states, none of them have been called yet, these swing states that we keep talking about. Let's take a look at where the candidates stand in those key states, though. North Carolina, at the moment, former President Donald Trump with a slight lead in North Carolina with 66% of the estimated vote in North Carolina. Vice President Kamala Harris with a very thin lead in Pennsylvania with 44% of the vote in. Wisconsin, another great state to watch here. 36% of the estimated total vote is in. 13,936 is the differential there in favor of former President Donald Trump. 16% of the estimated vote is in our state of Michigan. 31,000 plus vote lead for Vice President Kamala Harris. And election results just starting to come in for the state of Arizona. These polls, of course, on the west side just closed a little bit ago. 34% of the estimated total vote is in. Look how close Arizona is. With 34% of the total vote in, 40 votes separate him and Vice President Kamala Harris at the moment in Arizona. That is another swing state to watch. Georgia, as far as estimated total vote is concerned, is the closest battleground state at the moment that we have to a possible result. Former President Donald Trump with a 223,000 vote lead at the moment with 80% of the estimated total vote in. That is 16 Electoral College votes, Arizona 11. So we're going to continue to keep a very close eye. Here's another look at nationwide. Again, these are NBC numbers, which is going to look a little bit different than the Associated Press numbers that we've been showing you as well. So according to NBC at the moment, the Electoral College race, 201 for former President Donald Trump and 81 for Vice President Kamala Harris. You can see what is needed to get to the magic number of 270 below each candidate's name there. So a lot of Electoral College college votes up for grabs still. You would expect as soon as polls close in California, very soon after, California will be called for Vice President Kamala Harris, which will tighten that race up a little bit as far as the numbers are concerned. And when we look at the battleground states, you might be asking, why are those so important? Let's look at what happened in 2020. Many of those battleground states, in fact, all of them except for North Carolina, went blue for President Joe Biden, who won with 306 electoral college votes. But in 2016, different story. Most of them went red for former President Donald Trump, who took down Hillary Clinton in 2016. That is why those states are considered the swing and battleground states of this 2024 election, and that is why we're going to continue to keep a very close eye on those close races as they come in tonight and even potentially into tomorrow and the days to come. Real quick update on the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan tightening a little bit with Vice President Kamala Harris at 50.5% of the votes that are tallied so far. Only 17% of the estimated total vote is in, so this is very preliminary numbers in the state of Michigan as well. And then the Senate race, similar numbers. Alyssa Slotkin maybe slightly outperforming the top of the Democratic ticket right now with 51.1%, and Mike Rogers at 46.2%. Again, you can see that differential when you're looking at the president race. About half a percentage point difference for Alyssa Slotkin versus Vice President Kamala Harris. So, and a lot of the vote totals are very similar. A lot of people, if you're voting for the presidential race, you're going to vote for the U.S. Senate race as well. So we're going to continue to keep a very close eye on this and how they're performing against the top of each ticket. Another close eye we're keeping on is the District 7 U.S. House race. Again, this is the seat left open by Alyssa Slotkin when she decided to run for the U.S. Senate. And Republican Tom Barrett with a lead at the moment over Democrat Curtis Hertel. Only 33% of the estimated total vote is in for District 7 in total. And if you look at Ingham County, not many votes are in for Ingham County, which is going to be Curtis Hertel's best chance to win this election is by winning Ingham County with authority. So we'll see how that ends up going in District 7. Let's zoom back out into the presidential race in the state of Michigan. The other counties to really keep an eye on, Kent County is going to be very close. Only 17% of the estimated total vote is reporting. And many of them from the city of Grand Rapids area at the moment, which is why you can see Vice President Kamala Harris with such a big lead at the moment percentage-wise, but not necessarily vote-wise. It's really not insurmountable at that time. And then you can see how each candidate did. Look at how many votes we're missing here. You can see, President Joe Biden won Kent County with 188,000 nearly votes. Vice President Kamala Harris has a lead, but there's only 42,000 votes in for her at the moment. So there's a lot that can happen in Kent County, but that is one of the counties that a lot of people are going to be watching really on the national level. And then if you look at District 5, you can see the incumbent Tim Walberg at the moment with a pretty healthy lead over his challenger, Democrat Libby Urban. You can see not all of the counties are reporting here, including we've got no results yet from Jackson County, so that'll be one of those that we continue to check in on. And then District 2, Republican John Molinar, the incumbent in this race, trying to fend off his Democratic challenger, Michael Lynch. So far, 65.7% of the votes that have been tallied so far. Again, it's early. Only 9% of the estimated total votes are in District 2. So this is something we'll continue to watch. We are getting results, it looks like, from Gratiot County now. Gratiot County, 75% of Gratiot County going towards the Republican John Molinar. So we'll continue to keep our eye on the 3 congressional district races here, 2, 5, and 7, which all play a role in the mid-Michigan area as well. So we'll definitely keep our eye on that. The local results, a lot of the local results are available on our website, WILX.com. Those results are coming in as we speak. We have a number of employees here in our newsroom manually entering those local election results, and that's something you can find on WILX.com. There's actually a bar at the top of the homepage that says election results. You click on that, you can sort it by county, by township, and you can look at all of the individual races that you might be interested in, and that's something that'll be easy for you to find on our website, WILX.com. Let's take another look at the electoral map. This is, again, what NBC has projected, which is why these numbers might look a little bit different than the Associated Press numbers that we've been showing you tonight as well. Again, though, I want to stress none of the key battleground states have been called yet, and there has not been a surprise at this moment. Colorado has just been declared for Vice President Kamala Harris, so that is something that we'll continue to watch. Her number goes up to 91, 179 Electoral College votes needed for Harris to secure the election. And Colorado, that's not a surprise, typically goes blue, as you can see it did in 2020, 2016, 2012, and 2008. So there's not really a surprise in Colorado going blue for Vice President Kamala Harris. We have not had a surprise yet, and we have not had a battleground state determined yet. So there isn't really much information to go off of as far as how this presidential election may play out. The closest thing we can do is tell you who is leading in some of these key battleground states. And as you can see, in North Carolina, this just updated not too long ago. Former President Donald Trump has taken the lead in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin. Again, less than half of the total vote has been counted in those states, but that's something to keep an eye on for sure. And then in North Carolina, we have 68% of the total vote is in, and former President Donald Trump has a nearly 200,000 vote lead in North Carolina with 68% of the vote in that state. So those are some of the races we're keeping very close eyes on, as well as Georgia and Arizona and Nevada. Arizona polls just closed not too long ago. Nevada polls will be closing shortly if they haven't already. So those results should start coming in very soon. We did hear from Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson live here on the News 10 Now desk just moments ago. A few of the key points that she wanted to point out is she believes that the state of Michigan is on track for a record-breaking turnout in this election. She believes that she's hoping that Michigan could be the first battleground state to report unofficial election results. If you go by percentage points, Michigan is trailing a little bit by some of the other key battleground states right now. And she believes that we are on pace to learn all of the unofficial results from Michigan by tomorrow, if not sooner. Again, the presidential race, this isn't a shock to anybody. We probably will not know who won the presidential race tonight. Of course, if we do, we'll be the first to tell you here on the News 10 Now desk. But at the moment, that we probably will not see a winner declared tonight. A lot of these counties in these key battleground states will be counting ballots into the days to come, similar to what we saw in 2020. So that is just one of the number of things that we're going to be keeping a focus on. And the key battleground states, as I mentioned, you can see these three currently. Former President Donald Trump has a lead in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The other key states are not showing up at the moment. We'll hopefully get that fixed in just a second. But these are the key battleground states we'll continue to keep an eye on. We have reporters spanned out across the state of Michigan tonight. We have Zachariah Wheaton out with the Alyssa Slotkin campaign, and then we have Jordan Burrell out with the Mike Rogers campaign in the race for the U.S. Senate. We're going to take a look right now at those campaign watch parties, and we're going to check in live with Zachariah Wheaton in just a second, if we can get him pulled up. Zachariah Wheaton is live with the Alyssa Slotkin campaign. Zach, what is the vibe in the campaign room there?
Yeah, so the crowd here in Detroit, they erupted with cheers once Alyssa Slotkin, she made that, once that initial announcement was made with Alyssa Slotkin getting that early lead, and that positive energy has continued here throughout the night. Senators Gary Peters and Debbie Stabenow, they just got done speaking as, of course, Alyssa Slotkin hoping to take over for one of the most hotly contested Senate seats in the country right now in the state of Michigan. Again, polls still getting those votes counted in, still figuring out how much of a lead, if there is any, for Slotkin and Rogers as well. Now, right now, there's over $140 million in ad dollars that have been spent just this campaign alone, with Slotkin outspending Rogers 5-1. So Democrats here in Detroit, they're hoping that spending advantage, the early results, they're hoping all those things lead to positive results by the end of the night. For now, reporting in Detroit, I'm Zachariah Wheaton, News 10.
Hi, Seth. I'm still here at Mike Rogers' watch party in Novi, and polls officially closed at 9 p.m. as we know, and it's honestly proving itself to be a very tight race, between the candidates that are vying for this U.S. Senate seat. They're both trying to get longtime Senator Debbie Stabenow's seat for this race. And honestly, talking to people in the room, they're still remaining very hopeful. Results are coming in by the minute as time goes on, and honestly, the spirit is very hopeful. They're very optimistic that Mike Rogers will get the Senate seat and that former President Donald Trump will get the top office seat as well. Now, talking to them, they also told me their biggest concerns right now are the economy. They say they can't afford the same things they could 4 years ago, and that's really one of the bigger sticking points for them tonight, and which is why they're rooting for Mike Rogers, who promised to lower gas prices, lower grocery costs, and, you know, get people to be able to buy homes again. That was one of the things he talked about just about an hour ago when he was up at the podium talking to people for the first time tonight. So it's a very tight race. We don't know much so far. Mike Rogers, when he did come to the podium, he did say he's not even expecting to get these results back tonight. So stay with News 10 as we get the latest information on this very, very tight race. But I'm going to send it back to you, Seth, in studio. But for now, live in Novi, I'm Jordan Burrell, News 10.
All right, Jordan, thank you. And, of course, we got both the campaigns covered for you tonight. The numbers keep coming in, and Alyssa Slotkin right now with a very slim lead over Mike Rogers with 18% of the total vote of the state of Michigan now being reported. If you compare that to the top of the ticket, you can see Vice President Kamala Harris currently, these numbers are updating as we speak, as I'm pointing at them. Alyssa Slotkin just barely outperforming Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket. Former President Donald Trump outperforming Mike Rogers in the Senate race. So it's kind of interesting to see how the top of the ticket works against the trickle-down effect through the rest of the ticket. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Let's get some more updates on the congressional races in the state of Michigan. 33% of the vote is in for the District 7 race between Republican Tom Barrett and Democrat Curtis Hertel. At the moment, Tom Barrett with a 57.7% to 39.1% lead in that U.S. House race. Of course, not too many votes have been cast in Ingham County, and that's where Curtis Hertel is going to try to make up that gap against the other counties in the surrounding areas. So we'll see how that ends up working out in District 7. If you look at District 5, Republican Tim Walberg, the incumbent in that race, pretty commanding lead over Libby Urban, his Democratic challenger, with 12% of the estimated total vote and 20% of the precincts reporting so far there. Still no results from Jackson County, so we're going to keep an eye on Jackson County when that starts coming in. That'll be one of the more populated areas in District 5 to get some results coming in for that. In District 2, you can see Republican John Molinar, the incumbent in this race, with a pretty healthy lead over his Democratic challenger, Michael Lynch. You can see most of the area that is covered by District 2 currently shaded red, leaning towards Molinar in this race. We do not have any votes tallied in from Ionia County either. So Ionia County, Jackson County, we're going to keep an eye on those as we learn those results as they come in. Also, no results yet from Calhoun County. That's another one that we're keeping an eye on, as well as Shiawassee County and Clinton County. So there are still several counties in the mid-Michigan area, if you zoom in here, still several counties that we do not have any results for at the moment that we are expecting to start populating here shortly. Ingham County, like I mentioned, not many votes have been cast yet, or have been tallied, I should say, yet. 16,843 total votes, and you can see the numbers expected to be pretty great. There are over 130,000 votes were in the last election for president. So a lot of votes still to come in Ingham County. We'll keep an eye on that as we get closer. Let's take a quick look at some of the other races that we've been following, including the Supreme Court. I'm getting news now that Iowa has been declared for former President Donald Trump. That's 6 electoral votes from NBC. So the electoral map here by NBC will be updated here with former President Donald Trump winning the state of Iowa, 207 now. That brings his total according to NBC. He needs 63 more electoral votes to win the presidency and take the Oval Office in January. At the moment, Vice President Kamala Harris, again, according to NBC, some of these you may have seen were called by the Associated Press, but have not been called so far by NBC. That is something that we're going to continue to monitor throughout the night. So as you can see here, the key battleground states are what we're really focusing on, and those key states, Well, 3 of them are loading at the moment. North Carolina with 72% of the vote. Former President Donald Trump is leading in that state. He's also leading in Pennsylvania with about half the votes in, and same can be said about Wisconsin. Very close race in the state of Wisconsin. There are 10 electoral college votes on the line in Wisconsin, 19 in Pennsylvania. That's the one that a lot of people are really looking at right now. So this is the look at the electoral map at the moment. Again, none of the key battleground states have been called as of 10:20 tonight. So this is something that we'll continue to keep a close eye on. As soon as one of those key battleground states starts to turn, then you start getting into clinching scenarios and what each candidate has to do to win the presidency and get to that magic number of 270. As we look back at the state of Michigan here, we have Vice President Kamala Harris, that lead shrinking in the state of Michigan at the moment with 20% of the total vote now in, 49.8% to 48.4%. One of the main counties, though, that we're waiting for more results to come in from, Wayne County. At the moment, you can see only 1% of the total vote is in, and former President Donald Trump actually has a lead in Wayne County. We do not expect that to stay. Wayne County is a traditional blue county, a pretty heavily blue county. So we'll see how those results change as all the votes start coming in. Again, only 1% of the total vote is in for Wayne County. The other one that we're going to check in very frequently on is Kent County. Kent County, 27% of the total vote is in, 48% of the precincts are reporting. At the moment, Vice President Kamala Harris has a relatively large lead in Kent County, but look how close it was in 2020. You can see 52.1 to 45.9. We do expect Kent County to be close yet again in this election, so those numbers will start to narrow as more precincts start to report in Kent County. We'll continue to keep you updated on that. And then Ingham County is another one where we just don't have enough results to get a real idea of how Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are performing in Ingham County compared to in 2020. We just don't have enough votes in to really compare those numbers quite yet. So we'll continue to keep you updated on those. As we zoom into the mid-Michigan area, still no results, as I mentioned, from Jackson, Calhoun, Shiawassee, Clinton, or Ionia counties. As soon as those start coming in, we'll keep you updated on what those counties are reporting. But right now, no votes have been tallied or at least reported from Calhoun, Jackson, Shiawassee, Clinton, or Ionia. The only county in our mid-Michigan area counties, I should say, are Washtenaw and Ingham that are currently leaning blue. Those are not necessarily a surprise. Those are the only ones that went blue in 2020 in that election as well. So no real surprises yet, but a lot of very small percentages so far being reported in the president's race. In this U.S. Senate race between Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers, kind of a similar story, 50.2% in for Alyssa Slotkin, slightly higher than what we're seeing out of Vice President Kamala Harris at the moment. But these numbers, like I said, just continue to update. And you can see the total vote numbers pretty similar there as well. We'll continue to check in to see how these candidates are doing compared to the top of their tickets as the numbers continue to come in. So Congressional District 7, another one here that we're continuing to keep a close eye on. Still only 33% of the total vote is in. Tom Barrett with a 57.7% lead to 39.1% for Curtis Hertel. The incumbents in District 5 and District 2 currently with healthy leads over their Democratic challengers. We'll continue to check in on that to see if that changes at all. But those, so far, no surprises at the moment, with 14% of the estimated total vote in for District 2 and about 13% of the total vote in for District 5. Quick look at some of the other races that we have. The Supreme Court in the state of Michigan. Kimberly Thomas currently with 61% of the total vote. Andrew Fink currently reporting at 39% of the total vote. You can see the lead there, over 100,000 votes, with about 11% total votes being reported so far in that Supreme Court race. U of M Regents. You can see the updates on that and the MSU Board of Trustees, those races, and more. The State Board of Education. We'll continue to filter through a few of these. A number of Michigan House races. We're not going to go into each of them because we just don't have the time to do it, to be honest with you. But you can find all of those race results on our website, WILX.com. Election Results tab at the top of the homepage will bring you to that, and you can see all of those election results in real time as they come into our newsroom. That is a great place to find all of the local election results as they come in. Well, I want to take you right back to the electoral map real quick and show you what the NBC official map count looks at the moment. Right now, former President Donald Trump has 207, Vice President Harris at 91. Well, we are going to check in on the Curtis Hertel campaign watch party, which is currently being held in East Lansing. Let's take you out there now.
We're waiting in line for 2 hours to vote, and we were somebody else was feeding them pizza and making sure that they but we're waiting 2 hours to be able to have their voice heard. And we're not going to settle for anything less than every legal vote being counted in this race. And that's going to take a while. So people are free to be here. I think the food's gone. But pizza's coming. Pizza's coming. So I just want to be clear with everybody. I am more than happy to come back out when we know more. But I also know that it's a school night, and for most of you, a work night as well. And I know we told many people that worked on the campaign that we can sleep on November 6th. It might be November 7th. I can't tell you right now. But I do want to say to every one of you that gave your blood, sweat, tears, money, and luck to this race, because that's what wins campaigns. I want to thank each of you for giving your time, your effort, and your hard-earned dollars to helping us be where we are right now. And so I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank my family who put up with a tremendous amount of time of me to be away from them, and also a level of character assassination that I don't think is becoming of American politics today. So we will come back out later on when there are more results in. I will tell you that it is probably not going to be for another couple hours that we really have a better indication of where things are. And I didn't want to make you sit out here while I sit in a small room with I don't want to say nerds, but you guys know who you are. The last thing I do want to say is I want to thank my staff. This campaign started with a staff of two, Sophia and I. Ashlyn came along very quickly. Ashlyn and I, Ashlyn was our finance director. I think that we raised more than almost any other seat in the country, certainly any other seat in the state, and put us in a good position to be able to be well-funded. And we had 25, if you're here, 25 interns at MSU. Raise your hand if you're here. And really, they're the reasons why I'm so optimistic. I mean, I watched over and over again their level of effort on the trail, their amount of registrations and vote commitments. They were all over campus today trying to encourage people to be part of the democratic process, and there is nothing more patriotic than that.
All right, that is Curtis Hertel in East Lansing at his campaign watch party. U.S. House Congressional District 7 here in the state of Michigan. This is a look at the latest numbers coming out of that race. Republican Tom Barrett currently with 57.7% of the vote compared to Democrat Curtis Hertel with 39.2%. 38.1% of the vote. Only 33% of the estimated total vote is in, and not many votes have been tallied from Ingham County, which is where Curtis Hertel can expect to have a stronger showing. So we're going to continue to keep you updated on that race. Of course, as more of these campaign watch parties, as more of these candidates start talking at these campaign watch parties, we'll continue to check in with them throughout the night as we have been doing. We do want to get back out to the electoral map here. These are the latest numbers from NBC. One thing you want to notice that none of the key battleground states have been called yet. All the key states pretty close. At the moment, with about half of the estimated total vote in, former President Donald Trump is winning Arizona in a close race, Georgia in a pretty close race, 88% of the vote being tallied already, though, in Georgia. And then in Michigan, Vice President Kamala Harris, that lead is shrinking very close, just over 4,000 vote lead for Vice President Kamala Harris. Votes have not started to be tallied in Nevada. North Carolina, former President Donald Trump with a 261,000 vote lead in North Carolina, 75% of the total vote in, estimated total vote is in North Carolina. Former President Donald Trump with a lead in Pennsylvania now with 55% of the total vote in that state, and 50% of the vote is in Wisconsin. Former President Donald Trump with a lead in Wisconsin as well. These are all races that we're going to keep a very close eye on throughout the night. You can see Michigan continuing to get closer and closer. Vice President Kamala Harris currently with a lead with only 22% of the total vote in, but it is very slight. 2,000, just about 2,500 vote lead for Vice President Kamala Harris in Michigan. So this is what we're looking at as far as the state of Michigan is concerned when you look at this presidential election. I mentioned it's getting close. It is getting very close. Vice President Kamala Harris, 49.2%. Former President Donald Trump, 49% of the vote that is in so far. We are lucky enough to be joined by Dr. Farhad Abbasi here with Michigan State University. We're talking about the importance of the Arab American vote, the Muslim vote, and the impact it could have on this election. The war in Gaza, one of the key issues that a lot of people on both sides of the political aisle have taken stances on. What is your opinion on the importance and the impact of the Muslim and Arab American vote on this election?
So now we should talk about Gaza and Lebanon. So it seems the conflict is ongoing now and growing in the impact is dire. But the concern is that this war has been going on for 1 year now, this conflict, and there was no active engagement of the voters' concern on this major issue. So, like I said, that it's a heartbreaking situation for some of the die-hard Democrats in the Muslim community. It has been a very difficult moment to choose between the two candidates because you did not feel your expectations, your desire represented by any one of them. But, just the fact that the incumbent factor, that you wanted a more effective government when it came to your concerns, is where the failure happened. But another thing I wanted to point out, like we see Elissa Slotkin doing better than the presidential candidate, I think there is so much power in individual engagement. And we might see that maybe people did not vote the party ticket, but they might support individual candidates who showed up for the community, who showed up for the voters. So that's where we see the difference between the two candidates. So I think what I want both parties to take from this election result is you cannot ignore or turn a blind eye to a community that's effective, organized, and very valuable to the election process.
Of course, a high Arab American population in Dearborn, which is well known across really the country. That is in Wayne County, which is always going to go blue as far as history is concerned. But it's the percentages, right, that could end up affecting the state of Michigan and the popular vote. So how much, the percentage-wise, do you think the Arab American population will vote in this election if you had to guess?
So the turnout, voter turnout is really high. But the difference we are seeing is that last election, 80% voted Democrat. And right now we are seeing like 40 to 50% would vote Democrat versus Green Party versus Republican Party.
Interesting. And so, you were very vocal about how the Arab American community maybe played a role in Joe Biden winning Michigan in 2020, and you think that that same kind of impact could be felt in this election, just maybe the other way.
Absolutely.
Interesting. All right. Well, we're going to continue to follow your expert advice there on that, on the Arab American population, the Muslim voters, and what they're feeling ahead of this election. We are keeping an eye on Wayne County. We don't have many results in from Wayne County, but we're going to continue to follow that closely. So thank you so much, Dr. Abbasi, for joining us on the News 10 Now Desk. We continue to follow the election results as they come in real time. I mentioned Wayne County, only 1% of the estimated total vote in for Wayne County. We're expecting that to change, obviously, very shortly. As you look at the state, former President Donald Trump has taken the lead in the state of Michigan, 49.3% of the vote that is in so far towards former President Donald Trump, 48.9% towards Kamala Harris. Of course, this is a very close race. We expected it to be a very close race. Once again, in this election, in this swing state that we have here in Michigan. Real quick look at the Senate race here in the state of Michigan. Alyssa Slotkin still with the lead over Republican Mike Rogers, 49.3%. When you compare that to the presidential ticket, you can see the percentages just a little bit different here. You can just see Vice President Kamala Harris actually just took the lead back. These votes just continue to come in, folks. So this is going to be updating throughout the night. But as you can see, relatively similar ticket performances, maybe slightly outperformed by Alyssa Slotkin compared to Kamala Harris, and maybe slightly underperforming as Mike Rogers compared to Donald Trump. But these numbers are very preliminary, and that's not much of a difference. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Let's see if any updates. There are some updates here for the U.S. House Congressional 7th District. Curtis Hertel closing the gap a little bit with Republican Tom Barrett as more results come in. 38% of the estimated vote is in there. Tim Walberg still with a big lead over his Democratic challenger, Libby Urban, in District 5, and in District 2, Republican John Molinar with a big lead over his Democratic challenger, Michael Lynch, in District 2. We continue to follow those races and more. We are joined now by Dr. Danielle Brown, who's joining us now at the News 10 Now desk. We just talked with Dr. Abbasi about the impact of the Muslim voters on this election. We want to talk about black voters and the black voter turnout here in the state of Michigan and really nationally. What role do you believe black voters will play in this election?
They play an incredible part of understanding how the Democratic vote goes. They typically lean towards the Democratic Party, but we've seen some differences in how people are anticipating that happening in this particular election. So it's really important to look out for both how they vote and when they vote.
And what issues do you think matter the most to black voters that you're hearing, at least?
There are many issues related to the economy, right? The number one issue that, especially here in Michigan, that people report being concerned about is the economy and economy-related issues. But there is also major concern about other issues that are happening. There's solidarity with some of the things that are at the height of the agenda for like Arab Americans, as was discussed earlier. And so there's issues with crime and policing that people are concerned about and very divided about in many different ways. And so there's other issues that are on the docket. This isn't like a one-issue community across the United States especially, but the economy and the cost of living are certainly, in our research, show they're at the top levels of concern.
Do you think there's going to be a massive shift in one way or the other in how black voters do or vote in the 2024 election compared to 2020? Or do you think it's going to be somewhat similar to the numbers that we saw in 2020?
I think it's going to be very similar. There is a push against blackness and many of the rhetoric, a lot of the rhetoric that's happening in politics. And so I think that this alignment will be very similar in what we've seen in previous cases. But certainly any tiny shift could be a major shift when we're talking about 50-50 polls. And so we have to be really careful about, even if there's a 5 to 10% shift in how people are voting, what that can do to the overall outcome of the election.
Well, it'll be very interesting. Of course, we'll get all the election results here in the next few days, and we'll keep a very close eye on that. But we want to thank you so much for joining us on the News 10 Now desk with your expertise on this topic, and we'll see how the state of Michigan and nationally black voters do vote in 2024. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. As the votes continue to come in here in the state of Michigan and nationwide, you can see the Senate race tightening up a little bit in the state of Michigan, with Alyssa Slotkin just barely hanging on to the lead over Mike Rogers with about 5,000 vote difference there across the state. Former President Donald Trump taking the lead in the state of Michigan over Vice President Kamala Harris. Still only 24% of the estimated total vote is in the state of Michigan, including only about 1% of Wayne County, which is obviously a county that you would expect Vice President Kamala Harris to do very well in going forward. So we'll see when Wayne County starts reporting more results how that affects the total statewide numbers. Let's look at the U.S. Senate race and how they're performing compared to the top of the ticket at the moment. You can see at the moment former President Donald Trump outperforming Mike Rogers on the ticket, whereas Alyssa Slotkin is outperforming Vice President Kamala Harris just slightly. These numbers, like I said, continue to update in real time. Let's look at the national electoral map. These are the numbers in states that have been called so far by NBC. These are a little bit different than the numbers you might see from the Associated Press throughout the night. So at the moment from NBC, 207 electoral votes have gone to former President Donald Trump, 91 to Vice President Kamala Harris. None of the 7 battleground states have been called yet. As soon as one of those is, we will let you know. And there haven't really been any surprises at the moment yet either. So if there is a surprise on this map or one of the key battleground states is called, we will definitely let you know. Let's take a look at some of the key states now, though. Arizona, this has been a very close race. 50% of the estimated total vote is in. Former President Donald Trump with a very small lead in Arizona. 88% of the estimated total vote is in Georgia, with former President Donald Trump having a lead of 150,000 votes at the moment. Michigan, very small lead for former President Donald Trump. And we also have in North Carolina, former President Donald Trump with a lead with 84% of the estimated total vote in. A lead in Pennsylvania as well with 58% of the total vote in, and Wisconsin as well. That's a very small lead with 55% of the total vote in Wisconsin. So these are all the swing states, and as you can see at the moment, former President Donald Trump performing very well in some of these states, although some of the bigger counties and bigger cities will take more time to tabulate those votes, which you would expect Vice President Harris to do better in some of those bigger cities. So we'll continue to watch some of the main battleground states. You can see Arizona just got a little bit closer with just over 1,000 there. So a lot of these are going to be right down to the wire. And as soon as one of those key swing states is called, we will let you know. It will also update, and here you'll see a big check mark, and it'll say winner on whoever is winning one of those key battleground states. Let's look at take another look at the electoral map here. A lot of these West Coast areas, especially California, 54 electoral votes. As soon as those polls close and start to be counted, it will not take long. History tells us for California to be called for Vice President Kamala Harris, and that's 54 electoral votes. So that will significantly jump her number up from 91, and we expect that to happen as soon as they start counting votes or shortly after in California. Again, though, a lot of these states still up for grabs, the key battleground states, and that's something we'll be definitely keeping a close eye on. You're wondering why it's a key battleground state? Look at 2020. A lot of those battleground states went blue. President Joe Biden reaping the benefits of that, taking down former President Donald Trump in 2020, whereas in 2016, former President Donald Trump performed very well in those swing states and took the presidency over Hillary Clinton in 2016. Those are all things that we're watching here tonight. In the state of Michigan, though, we continue to get updated numbers in here. Former President Donald Trump, 49.7% of the total vote. You can see this is where the total numbers ended up in 2020. It was close. I mean, it was very close in 2020. Less than 200,000 votes, separated the two candidates in 2020. That will likely be the case or somewhere around there again in this election. So we'll continue to keep an eye on these numbers. Again, I want to point out Wayne County has barely reported any numbers here, and you would expect Vice President Kamala Harris to do very well in Wayne County. So we'll see how those numbers continue to unfold throughout the night. If you want to zoom in to mid-Michigan, we are getting some results now from Jackson County and Shiawassee County, as well as Ionia County. Clinton and Calhoun still have not started reporting results yet. Jackson County, no surprise here, went pretty heavily towards former President Donald Trump in 2020, and it is at the moment going towards Donald Trump again in 2024. Barely any votes have been tallied in Jackson County, though. Shiawassee County, same deal. Not many votes, just over 1,000 have been tallied so far in Shiawassee County. You can see former President Donald Trump did very well in Shiawassee County last election as well. If we zoom back out here to the state of Michigan, we can get another update on the U.S. Senate race as well. A dead heat right here at the moment. Alyssa Slotkin with just barely about a 500 vote lead over Republican Mike Rogers. And you can see Slotkin doing a little bit better than Kamala Harris is percentage-wise against the other side of the ticket. Oh, there we go, another update. Mike Rogers has now taken the lead in the state of Michigan, 48.7% of the vote compared to 48.5%. These numbers continuing to come in as we speak. More updates around the congressional districts. District 7, no update on the percentages there. Tom Barrett's still leading Curtis Hertel. 38% of the vote is in. Tim Walberg, the incumbent in District 5, still defeating his, or at the moment winning against his Democratic challenger, Libby Urban. And then in District 2, John Molinar with 66.2% of the total vote in over Michael Lynch, who has 30.6%. 29% of the total vote is in that race. Quick look at the Supreme Court race in Michigan. Kimberly Thomas with 61.1%. You can see about a 200,000 vote difference here between her and Andrew Fink in the Supreme Court race. The Board of Regents for U of M, MSU, the State Board of Education, and then all the Michigan House races. We don't have time to go through all these, but I'll just quickly kind of filter through some of them. All of these results you can find on our website, WILX.com. Just click on the election results tab that's at the top of our homepage. It'll take you to every election result that you can imagine in our mid-Michigan area and across the state. You can filter by county, and that'll take you to all the ballot proposals, millages, so on and so forth. Those numbers will be updating on our website. We've got a whole team of people inputting data in our newsroom right now. A lot of people working behind the scenes to make sure that those numbers get to you as quickly as possible. The State House District 46 is an interesting district that we'll be following. That is because Jackson Mayor Daniel Mahoney is in that race. Currently with 60.4%, very little of the vote is in, 14%, but 60.4% of the vote so far for Daniel Mahoney over his opponent, Republican Kathy Schmaltz, who has 39.6%. So just some of these House races that are impacting mid-Michigan as we filter through them. Again, you want to see all the latest numbers, you can follow all of those on our website at WILX.com. So that is what we are learning that Molinar in District 2 has claimed victory over his Democratic challenger, Michael Lynch. Molinar is the incumbent in District 2, and at the moment he has 66.2% of the vote with 31% of the estimated total vote in. Democrat Michael Lynch has 30.6% of the total vote in. You can see the coverage area, vast region that district covers. A lot of different counties involved in that race. But John Molinar, we're being told, has claimed a victory in this race. So that is something that we'll definitely be keeping an eye on. Republican Tim Walberg, another incumbent in District 5, has a similar commanding lead over his challenger, Democrat Libby Urban. Only 19% of the total vote is in that race, though, so a little bit of time to go there. But we are starting to see Jackson County report more and more results, just 3% at the moment, but they had 0% about 5-10 minutes ago. So those numbers will continue to go up, the vote totals, of course, for both candidates as well. So that's something we're continuing to keep an eye on. Former President Donald Trump expanding his lead a little bit in the state of Michigan. 25% only of the total vote has been counted, though, and a lot of the rural counties have a significant more percentage of their vote in at the moment. Wayne County, again, still only has 1% of the total vote in. So that's Wayne County is really one that we're going to watch. We're also going to watch Kent County, which is closing a little bit. We mentioned that this was pretty close in 2020. I expect Kent County to be relatively close yet again. We'll see how that plays out. At the moment, Kamala Harris has a 64.3 to 33.8% lead, but only 31% of the estimated total vote is in Kent County. As you zoom into the mid-Michigan area, you can see a lot of red on the map outside of the two usual suspects in the mid-Michigan area, which is Ingham County and Washtenaw County, where Vice President Kamala Harris is performing pretty well so far. 64% of the vote is in Washtenaw County, so about 2/3 of that vote is in. Vice President Kamala Harris polling at 66.2% so far with the vote, but President Joe Biden had 72.7% of the vote in 2020. So unless that number comes up for Vice President Kamala Harris, President Joe Biden is outperforming her in Washtenaw County. We'll see how those numbers end up as we go throughout the night. And same can be said in Ingham County, where President Joe Biden had 65.2% of the vote. At the moment, again, not many results are in, but 56.2% of the vote so far going towards Vice President Kamala Harris in Ingham County. These are all results that we're going to continue to keep an eye on as they come in throughout the night. You can see the state of Michigan map there filling in as more counties are starting to report results. Still waiting on Clinton County, and we're still waiting on Calhoun County to start reporting results in the mid-Michigan area. We're going to continue to keep you updated as those do. We are joined again now by Michael McDaniel, expert with the Cooley Law School here, and we're talking about election safety, election security, and the threats that have been around the election. If you have not been with us for very long, we talked a little bit earlier about some of the hoax calls that were called in, threats to different polling locations, not only in Michigan, but other states as well. And very quickly, police and authorities were able to trace those calls back to Russia and claim that they were hoax calls, but still threats related to our election and security. So when we look at the election and those threats, what concerns you maybe the most about some of those threats that have been called in?
Well, I think first of all, let's look at the fact that we did not have any widespread coercion, intimidation at polling places like we were concerned about. So in that respect, it's been a great election across the board. And we have to look and see whether or not the political rhetoric and potential violence will ramp up either with January 6th or with an inauguration day. Certainly they're making plans for that in Washington, D.C. But for the most part, we've been really happy with what we've seen in all the polling precincts across the nation. Just some isolated little instances. Certainly we've seen delays. We've seen some attempts at intimidation, as we talked about earlier. But overall, it's been a pretty quiet night. It's certainly been a very tight race, and I think everybody's on the edge of their seats, Seth. But for the most part, we've seen some pretty good results in terms of election security, both in terms of cybersecurity and physical security.
Only about 25% of the vote is in for the state of Michigan, so certainly a long way to go. It could be a late night for a lot of folks that are interested in the results here in the state of Michigan. When you look at election security in general, a lot of, after 2020, there was a lot of claims about the election security and election integrity, stuff revolving that. After this election, are you anticipating similar claims about the election security and integrity going forward?
One thing that I think is really telling, and you've seen it over the course of the evening that you've been demonstrating the results for us, is that they're coming in very steadily. If you'll recall, 4 years ago, we would see these gaps in time where there would be a wait and then all of a sudden a huge slug or tranche of votes would come in. And we're seeing a more steady approach this time, which shows that the training and the processes have been really tightened up, and it looks a lot better. And as a result of that, I think we're seeing a lot more credibility in the election results than we saw 4 years ago. And as a result, less likely to have tendencies for violence.
All right. Well, if anything pops up, we already had another situation about an hour ago pop up in Arizona with a polling location there. They're going to keep that open a couple hours later because of a threat. If anything else pops up, we're going to continue to keep you handy and around.
Yep.
Thank you, as always, for your expertise, and thanks for joining the News 10 Now Desk.
Thanks, Seth.
All right. We will continue to follow the latest presidential results as they come in. This is the latest. Another 1% came in. 26% of the total vote is in. Former President Donald Trump currently leading in the state of Michigan. It's a close race, although it is growing a little bit with about 3.5 percentage points now the difference. Again, I continue to stress one of the big things we're going to continue to watch is Wayne County, which is still only reporting 1% of the total vote. That is certainly going to change things for Vice President Kamala Harris. We do have our initial results from Calhoun County. Calhoun County just reporting now their first results. 3% of the total vote is in Calhoun County, 71.2% towards former President Donald Trump so far. In 2020, former President Donald Trump did win Calhoun County with 54.7. So at the moment, former President Donald Trump doing better in Calhoun County than he did in 2020. We'll continue to keep an eye on all of the mid-Michigan counties here. 16% of Ingham County now reporting 10% of the precincts. So 16% of the total vote, I should say, is in for Ingham County, 56.2% to Vice President Kamala Harris, and 66.2% in Washtenaw County as well. So those are just some of the numbers we're seeing in the state of Michigan so far. Again, only 26% of the estimated total vote, 17% of the total precincts. Still very early. Let's take a look at the key states yet again. We continue to check in on some of the bigger battleground states as we get all these election results in. Arizona is a very close race at the moment, just over 1,000 votes separating them. 50% of the total vote is in. Former President Donald Trump in the lead there. Former President Donald Trump with the lead in Georgia and in Michigan, as we mentioned. North Carolina at the moment with 84% of the vote in. Pennsylvania with 61% of the total vote in, and then in Wisconsin with 56% of the total vote, and that's a close race in Wisconsin. Really, all of these are close, too close to call for the NBC, AP, or CNN at the moment. As soon as one of these races is called, we'll be the first to let you know here on the Now Desk. Let's look at the electoral map. This is according to NBC. That's 2016, of course. Not every state has been called. In 2024, this is a look at what NBC has called so far. We're waiting on a lot of states, obviously. California, you would likely will go to Vice President Kamala Harris very soon after the votes start to get tallied there. And then the highlighted ones are the key states that we went over just a second ago, where the margins are razor thin in those states, and those are likely the ones that are going to decide who sits in the Oval Office come January. So we'll continue to keep a very close eye on the electoral map. In the state of Michigan, you can see more numbers coming in here. Former President Donald Trump extending his lead a little bit, 3.7% difference over Vice President Kamala Harris. U.S. Senate race, Mike Rogers with the lead now over Alyssa Slotkin. A little bit tighter of a race there with about 2.1 percentage points separating those two candidates. We'll keep an eye on those. District 2. John Molinar, the incumbent, has won District 2. He's claimed his seat yet again over his Democratic challenger, Michael Lynch. So John Molinar will continue to represent the 2nd District in the U.S. House. District 5, Republican Tim Walberg performing very well so far against his Democratic challenger, Libby Urban. 24% of the total vote is in, 29% of the precincts reporting. About 70% of the total votes so far going to Tim Walberg in District 5. And then in District 7, which we expect to be maybe the closest of those congressional district races. At the moment, Republican Tom Barrett, 55.8% compared to Curtis Hertel's 40.9%. Only 39% of the estimated total vote is in. We will continue to update you on all of these races as we continue to get numbers in. Again, we are only at 27% of the estimated total vote. At the moment, we're going to start showing you all of the election results on a loop as they come in, live election results, and we'll break into coverage if need be with some of the bigger updates surrounding the presidential election and some of the local elections as well. We want to thank you for joining us on News 10 Plus. Stay tuned. We're going to have much more coming up across the state and really in the presidential election as well.